Good.
Sweater on. On my coat?
Yes. I like to be the chief.
No, you.
Committee of the Whole will come to order. Clerk, call the roll.
All right, Council Capone.
Here.
I got Council DeFlorio.
Here.
I got Council Hill.
Here.
I got Council Mannion.
Here.
I have Council Marquez.
Here.
I got Council McKinnon.
Here.
Council Napolitano.
Here.
I got Council Schiffner.
Here.
I have Council Sani.
Here.
And Council Simoni.
Here.
Present.
10 members present. We have a quorum. Please rise and salute the flag. Before the clerk reads our first piece of business, we have a communication from Councilor Della Sola. He has a family commitment this evening and will not be able to attend. Clerk will read the first item of business.
All right, in accordance with section 6-5 of the Emmett City Charter, Mayor Carl P. Bruner presents his fiscal year 2016 capital approval.
The pleasure of the council.
Do we have a presentation? If we could invite the Mayor's Chief of Staff up for the presentation?
Second motion.
Okay. Second?
Second.
It's moved and second to invite the Chief of Staff and any other personnel necessary to make the presentation. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You have so moved.
How are you today? Melissa Murphy, Mayor DeMaria's Chief of Staff. We do have a presentation. It is rather long. There are department heads available to you in the audience as well. We just ask that you hear the presentation first and ask questions at the end. I think it would make it more streamlined. And Rich Risque is actually going to do the first part of the presentation, so if you don't mind inviting him up, he'll take the stand from here.
Thank you.
Richard, just introduce yourself for the record. And we'll go
Sure.
from there.
My name is Richard Biscay. I'm the city auditor for the city of Everett. And I'm here to do an overview of the 2015 through 2019 capital improvement plan and the proposed 2016 capital budget. So, the difference between a capital improvement plan, capital improvement budget, is that the plan is the long-term plan, which is in your binder as a 5-year plan. The budget is the fiscal year that we're about to go into, fiscal year 16, and the spending plan for those capital items. Combined, the capital improvement plan and the capital budget are tools that help the city professionalize how capital projects are identified, prioritized, and funded for all the city departments. Why do we do a capital improvement plan? This is an excerpt from the Capital Budgeting Guide for Local Governments. Capital planning and budgeting is central to economic development, transportation, communication delivery of essential services, environmental management, and quality of life of the citizens. Much of what we accomplish by local government depends on a sound long-term investment in infrastructure and equipment. clerk here is passing out, I have an update of the section 3 of your budget. Found a typo in there, and you were also lacking section 7, which is the impact document. And coming shortly will be the details of all the capital improvement items that are in the plan.
What is this, belong?
So, capital improvement plan is the long-term plan for the capital improvement for the city. We're trying to ensure that all the CIP needs are being addressed responsibly, based upon priority and thoughtful planning. Critical component of capital improvement budgeting, an overall budget strategy, and it gives the administration the ability and knowledge to address deferred maintenance, infrastructure needs, and all other capital items of the city. So last Monday, we passed out a binder that's a comprehensive document that has the mayor's message in there, an overview of the capital improvement program, an executive summary of the request for the capital budget for fiscal year 16. We have copies of our debt and capital improvement policies, a 5-year summary of the plan, a debt service impact, pro forma debt schedules, and detailed summary of the projects requested. So again, the capital budget is the upcoming year's spending plans for the capital items that we like to see funded. Those capital improvement, the capital improvement budget, we hope to have certified and okayed by the council before we present the operating budget, because a lot of which goes into building the operating budget has to do with what plans, what projects are approved and the funding for those particular projects. So it is our hope that the capital budget is approved prior to the submission of the operating budget. If and when approved as submitted or modified, I'll bring back some bond authorization requests and some requests from our capital improvement stabilization fund that we created, as well as building items into the operating budget as listed in the capital improvement plan. So hopefully, if the capital budget is approved timely, the administration will be able to appropriately budget for these capital expenses that we're requesting. In the capital improvement budget, to be clear, capital asset is an asset that has a value of $35,000 or higher and a useful life of 5 years. If items don't meet those 2 thresholds, we'll put them in the operating budget as an annual operating expense of the city. The executive summary of the capital improvement budget, it has multiple funding sources: grant funds, free cash, operating funds, appropriations, bonding. The total plan for the city of Everett for fiscal year 16 is $25,317,500. We are proposing selling bonds for $19,757,500. We've identified $4,045,000 of grants and other financing sources. We propose $405,000 worth of operating appropriations for capital and $1,110,000 appropriated from the Capital Improvement Stabilization Fund. The details of all this can be found in your binders. So in summary, sound financial management represents one of the most critical aspects of local government administration. Capital plan enhances the community's credit rating. We're a AA-rated community by Standard & Poor. Helps control tax rate and avoids sudden changes in debt service requirements. We do try to feather in the debt service to keep it manageable. Capital planning process will keep the public informed of current community objectives as well as future needs and projects. And sound policies and planning will identify the most economical means for financing the capital needs of the city. That's the macro view of what you have in front of you with regard to the capital. All the specific projects we have loaded in, I'm going to let Melissa walk through those for you, and then we're hoping that we can get through the program here and then answer any questions, either Melissa, myself, or any of the department heads that are in the building. Thank you.
Okay, take off from where Rich ended. Like he said, a lot of our department heads are here today. Jamie Erickson's not here, but Tony Souza and I would be happy to answer any questions you have on the planning items. All right, so proposed capital projects and equipment, all the projects and equipment are compiled from department requests. So what you're seeing is actually requested by the department heads that are here today. The police, and I don't think anyone's here from the police either, but I'd be happy to handle those. The police has requested a new prisoner vehicle, and that's the wagon they use to transport the prisoners. It's a replacement of their current vehicle. The current vehicle is approximately 12 years old. The cost of the item is $50,000, and the funding source is the CIP Stabilization Fund. If you remember correctly, about 3 years ago, the city implemented some financial policies where we transferred a certain amount, I believe it's 20%, of free cash each year to the CIP Stabilization Fund. That would be funded from that, and it would require an appropriation from this board. And this is a picture of the current vehicle. The police are also requesting portable radios. It's a replacement of their existing radios that they have now. This will replace 1/5 of the radios. The cost is $100,000, and the funding source is the CIP Stabilization Fund. It's likely you will see this as a continuing appropriation yearly for a few years until we replace all of the radios. This is a picture of the current radio. Fire has requested new turnout gear. This is the firefighter gear that they wear when they're fighting fires. This will pay for approximately 40 sets. 20 of the sets will be used for new hires and 20 are replacements. The plan is to replace 25 sets per year after the first year. The cost is $100,000, and the funding source is the CIP Stabilization. And that's a picture of the turnout gear. ISD requested 2 Ford Escapes. These are 2 vehicles to add to the fleet being used by inspectional services. They're most likely going to be used by the building inspectors. Just so you know, any vehicles that we're requesting that are administration vehicles will be using Ford Escapes. As part of the Green Communities Act, since we are now a green community, we have to adhere to certain requirements, or we agreed to adhere to certain requirements for our vehicles, and Ford Escapes meet those requirements. The cost is $60,000, and the funding source is the CIP Stabilization Fund. City Services, 3 Ford Escapes. These would be 3 new vehicles to add to the fleet. Will be used by the administrators in their duties. Cost is $90,000. Funding source is CIP Stabilization Fund. City Services is asking for an excavator. This is a new vehicle to add to the fleet for increased services. It will be used for tree pits and small sidewalk jobs. Currently, we've been renting this equipment each year and paying between $10,000 and $15,000 a year. The cost is $95,000, and the funding source is the CIP Stabilization Fund. City Services is requesting a 4-ton roller. We currently have a 1.5-ton roller, and we're looking to purchase something that is bigger. It's a new purchase, so something we don't have. It's used for smoothing cement for pothole repairs and small paving projects. Cost $40,000. Funding source CIP Stabilization Fund. City Services is requesting a skid steer with attachments. Basically, it's a Bobcat. It's a new Bobcat we'll be adding to the fleet. It will have a snow removal attachment and sweeping attachments. The cost is $70,000, and the funding source is the CIP Stabilization Fund. This is a picture of what it looks like. City Services is requesting 2 backhoes. One will be at the cemetery and one will be at the highway. One is a replacement of the 2001 backhoe, and the other is in addition to the fleet. The cost is $230,000, and the funding source is a bond. This is a picture of the one that we'd be replacing. This is actually a request that came in from the school department, but we've slotted it as City Services. It's currently, if you're sitting in the bleachers at the stadium, there is a few spots that are very, very dark, and we've had complaints about it. So we'd like to solve that lighting problem by putting new lights in that go into that area, so we don't have anybody fall or any other situations. The cost is $125,000, and the funding source is the CIP Stabilization Fund. The Health Department is requesting a Ford Escape as well. The vehicle will be used by the public health nurse and the food and milk inspector, as well as occasionally by other people in the department as well. The cost is $30,000, and the funding source is the CIP Stabilization Fund. They are currently using their own vehicles. The planning department and the school department together have requested the Webster School tot lot to be done. So this would be design and construction of the tot lot, including new equipment and new surfacing. The focus would be on younger preschool age children. The cost is $200,000, and the funding source is the CIP Stabilization Fund. Planning department is requesting swings for Glendale Park. Currently, that tot lot does not have swings. It will be installation of the swings, including the ADA compliant swing, which is now required in all new parks. The cost is $150,000, and the funding source is the CIP Stabilization Fund. So police in parking is requesting 4 new vehicles for parking enforcement. So what would happen is that the 4 vehicles currently being used by parking enforcement would go to the police department, and 4 new energy-efficient vehicles would replace those vehicles. And the current vehicles aren't in great condition, but they would be used by traffic, the patrol supervisor, detective, and command staff. And the cost is $120,000 for 4 of them, and the funding source would be parking receipts. And that's the patrol supervisor car now. This is something that came from the council, the purchase of smart meter. Description would be a smart parking meter with credit card capability. We'd be installing them in parking lots as pilot programs. The cost is $75,000, and the funding source would be parking receipts. And if you remember correctly, parking receipts is the money that comes in from the meters that we have now, and it goes into a revolving account, and it's appropriated by the council. It's a picture of what they look like in Boston. School renovation of the Powling cafeteria. So the school has requested full renovation of their cafeteria. The cost is $1.5 million, and the funding source is the cafeteria revolving account. The Powling School, yep. So cemetery design services. This is design services to help the city with future cemetery renovations, including street plans and potential new grave sites. The cost is $200,000, and the funding source is the perpetual care account. If you remember earlier this year, the council passed a home rule petition that would allow us to borrow from the perpetual care account, and this would be what we would use that for. Planning Sacramone Park. Full reconstruction of Sacramone Park, including playing surface, tot lot, and snack shack. The cost is $3 million, and the funding source is both the park grant and bond. This is a request from planning, construction of Lower Florence Street Park. This is a renovation of the park, including a tot lot in the splash park area. We have a grant for the entire splash park, which is $200,000. The total cost is $1.2 million. Funding source is grant and bond. So this is planning purchase of utility poles. The city is looking to purchase the utility poles from National Grid. So currently all the poles that you see in the city are owned by National Grid. We're looking to purchase those poles. And what we would do is put LED lights on them for cost savings. And we had MAPC do a study of that, and it was determined that we could save $220,000 per year if we did that. So through Green Communities, we can apply for a $270,000 grant. We applied for the grant for this project. So $655,000 of this would be grant and other funding source. The other funding source is an incentive from the electric company, and $450,000 would be a bond. So it would take approximately 2 years for us to see the savings. ADA accessibility citywide. This funding will be used to increase accessibility for people with disabilities in the city, including handicap ramps. The cost is $50,000, and the funding source would be the ADA special revenue account. So the Disability Commission would actually vote on this appropriation. Roadway repairs. This is repairs to roadways, including full reconstruction and mill and overlay. This is a yearly appropriation that you see, allows us to maintain and fix streets. The cost is $3,650,000. The source is bond and Chapter 90. IT, replacement of city technology. Again, this is an annually recurring item. It funds new computers, printers, servers, and other equipment. The cost is $50,000, and the funding source is the operating budget. The police have requested 4 cruisers. Again, this is something you see every year. It's part of our vehicle replacement program to keep the maintenance costs down. The cost is $140,000, and the funding source is the operating budget. So you'll vote on this when we do the budget in May. This is a picture of the newer cruisers. Police conducted electrical weapons, tasers. This will outfit the entire department with conducted electrical weapons and replace some aging weapons. About 10 of our tasers are aged and need to be taken out. The cost is $75,000, and the funding source is the operating budget. This is a picture of the taser. Fires requested a fire prevention vehicle, a replacement vehicle that is not currently in working condition. The cost is $40,000, and the funding source is the operating budget. Enhanced crosswalks, yearly appropriation to continue outfitting the city with enhanced crosswalks for public safety. The cost is $40,000. The funding source is the operating budget. That's a picture of what the finished crosswalks look like. A fire is requested a replace of ladder 1. It's replacing an aging apparatus that is becoming very costly to repair. The cost is $1.2 million. The funding source is a bond, and these typically take 6 months to a year to build. City Services are requesting a 10-wheel dump truck. We'll be adding an additional dump truck to our fleet for increased services, would have a plow and sander. A lot of our equipment did take a beating this winter, obviously, so you'll see more plows and sanders on the request list than typically. The cost is $230,000, and the funding source is a bond. This is quite a large plow. And they've also requested a 6-wheel dump truck, same story, it's $160,000, and the funding source is a bond. They've also requested 2 F-350 pickups with sanders and plows. They'll be replacing vehicles that were bought in 1999. The cost is $120,000, and there's some pictures of what these vehicles look like. This isn't actually the one we're replacing. I think we're replacing a different one, but it gives you an idea.
You want to buy F-150, same kind of truck, or pick up the vehicles,
It's F-350s,
350s?
350s. That's a picture of the current vehicle. We're also requesting a street sweeper, so a replacement of our current sweeper. Both of our sweepers are down right now. It looks like we probably surplus and auction off both of them and buy this one. So it would be for a street sweeper and the street sweeper parts. This will be used on main thoroughways mostly. The sweeper is aging, and repairs obviously are costly. Current equipment needs, one of the current machines needs a $50,000 repair. The cost is $210,000, and the funding source is a bond. That's a picture of our street sweeper. We're also requesting a sidewalk plow. This winter, we're renting sidewalk plows. We'd like to stop doing that and try to purchase them. I believe we were renting two. The cost is $160,000, and the funding source is a bond. We're requesting a front end loader with a plow. The cost is $210,000, and the funding source is a bond. This is a general refurbished parks and tot lots. This is an annual appropriation that you see every year. Allows us to refurbish, repair the parks and tot lots, including equipment, flooring. The cost is $700,000. The funding source is a bond. In the past, if you remember, this year, I think you saw us take the sand and the mulch out of a lot of the parks and put in the rubberized flooring for safety reasons. We did that at the Lafayette School and a few other parks as well. This is just a picture of what the mulch looks like, and then some equipment that's damaged at the end of the winter. Oh, maybe even before. Purchase of open space. So this is specifically for purchase of land, including the Best Buy site. So not actual Best Buy, but the little piece of Best Buy that's next to it, next to Sacramone Park. Specifically, we'd be purchasing open space in accordance with our open space plan, $1.3 million, and the funding source is the bond. This is the design of the Meadows Playground. So this is a redesign of aging park to allow for more uses for younger children. The cost is $187,500, and the funding source is the bond. This is the design of Upper Florence. So this is a redesign of the Upper Florence Street Park to improve the park and create better accessibility. The cost is $150,000, and the funding source is a bond. This is design and construction of new City Hall at the old high school. This is obviously not full construction costs. This is getting us to construction documents. This project is in preliminary design with last year's CIP funds. This will allow for final construction documents for a new City Hall and police station, and will also be used for exploration of environmental and system issues. The cost is $3 million, and the funding source is a bond. Planning OPM and design of a new rec. So this would go at the old rec site after City Hall moves to the old high school. This is design and schematics for a new recreation and wellness center at the site of the old rec center, including, we hope, putting in a pool, because currently every high school doesn't have a pool to practice at. The cost is $350,000, and the funding source is a bond, and I'm sorry, I scooped up there. This is the MSBA feasibility study. So if you remember correctly, we applied about 6 months ago for the Cavarian School. The next step in that would be to do this feasibility study. Obviously, a school is very much needed in the Woodlawn area, so that's the feasibility study area. The cost is $1.5 million, and that cost was given to us by MSBA. That's the anticipated amount. The funding source would be a bond with the potential for reimbursement from the state if we went forward with the school. The school department has requested air conditioning at the Webster. This is installation of air conditioning at Webster School for health and comfort of the students. The cost is $800,000, and the funding source is a bond. Replacing the schoolyard and walkway at the Parlin Inn. It's a mill and overlay of the schoolyard and walkway. Cost $750,000, funding source bond. This is just a picture of what it looks like now. and construction of additional classrooms at the Parlin. They want to put some additional classrooms in for much-needed classroom space. The cost is $1.5 million, and the funding source is the bond. And that's it.
Motion to accept delivery.
What's the pleasure of the council? Do you want to ask questions this evening of department heads? Do you want to take time to look over the capital budget? If I may, before we do that, would you be more comfortable sitting at the table? That's fine?
If you want.
Okay.
I would rather have her, because I don't like talking to her.
I'm happy to go to
Okay.
the table. Any way you want is fine.
Okay, right. The one thing that I do want to remind you, it's been brought to my attention, and it's just the mechanics of when we speak and we turn our heads. We need to speak into the microphones because the folks at home can't hear us.
Right.
It's tough because we're here and we're so close that we hear everything, but the folks at home aren't catching what we're saying. So when you're speaking, even though it's difficult because you're turning your head, if you could just adjust your microphone in such a way that the folks at home could hear it, I'd greatly appreciate it. Yeah, this'll be referred at the end of this, it's a committee meeting, it'll be referred from here to our next council meeting. You could ask questions this evening, questions Monday, well, the 13th, what's in front of us, so,
You know, degree,
Yeah.
you know,
yeah. Whatever level of information you require, so feel free to ask whatever questions we have, department heads in the audience, so whatever you
There
need
also needs to be a
answered,
public
feel free to-
hearing, just so you know. There
Yeah.
does also need to be a public hearing on it
Yeah,
as well,
on the
so we'll be
13th.
available to you then as well.
So there'll be the public hearing for public comment, then it'll be in front of us on a council meeting the same evening. And so you ask whatever you have tonight. If you have questions you can, that haven't formulated yet, you've got the 13th to do that. So at this point in time, I think I have Councilor Napolitano.
Thank you. Got a couple general questions. What is the total amount of money that is going to be transferred for the capital improvement stabilization fund? I notice there's a number of items here. I started trying to add them up, but
$1.11 million.
$1.1 million?
Yeah, we had, in tab 3 is executive summary. We actually updated the document. I found a typo in there, so we just handed out an updated document. But the first page of that executive summary, CIP stabilization fund, $1,110,000 is being requested from that fund.
Okay. How much is in that fund right now?
$1,587,093.
Now, also an item with the perpetual care account. You said there would be a loan.
If you remember correctly, about 6 months ago, we did a home rule petition that would allow us to borrow against the perpetual care account. So typically, the way a perpetual care account works is that you could only use the interest. Obviously, we're not getting much interest on the account. We don't really have a lot of new grave sites being bought. We don't really have a lot of new grave sites to be bought. So we did the home rule petition, and the home rule petition allowed us to borrow from the balance instead of from the interest. So what we would do is that we'd loan it to ourselves and then pay it back to the perpetual care account.
How will it get paid back?
It would be almost like a bond. I don't know how else you would situate it. I don't know if
What?
Rich would be better to answer that, how we pay back the perpetual care account.
Yeah, we just pay ourselves back through an appropriation.
So it'll be like a line item on the budget to pay that money back?
Yeah, that's how I envision it now. It's, you know, this will be the first time we use that, but we thought it'd be a good idea to, as opposed to paying, interest on, to a bank or an institution, we could use the perpetual care dollars that we have. Again, they're not, allowed to be spent in principal, so we would take a loan against our own dollars and pay ourselves back with interest. And that account gets funded through the sale of the, lots and graves, so.
How much are we anticipating in Chapter 90 money for this year? I noticed,
I have a $650,000 in there as an estimate. Last year, we estimated the same. The governor, new governor did a release, I believe $100 million there. That gave us about $970,000 for fiscal year 15. We had estimated $650,000, but I kept it at $650,000. We won't know that figure until it releases, but we don't spend that money until we know what it is. But just as a matter of painting a complete picture, we put a placeholder in there for $650,000.
now is that all for new projects or?
Chapter 90 money is, there's certain restrictions with that. You can't do smaller little repair work. It has to be a good stretch of road. There's certain parameters in which you have to spend that money, but it's all going towards roadway construction rehabilitation in the city.
Where does money come for projects that are less than 2 years old, let's say, that are not holding up?
Through the bond authorizations from prior fiscal years, we've had $3 million bond authorization the past several fiscal years, so we put the projects out as the money becomes available through the allocation from the council. We put a road project out to bid, and we do the streets accordingly.
Right, but I'm talking about streets that have already been done in the last 2 to 3 years that need to either be redone or that the work was substandard.
I'm not aware of any.
Come by my house.
Well, the way it would work is if it's still under warranty, we would go after the contractor. If it's normal wear and tear that would be expected, so normal wear and tear versus substandard work is a different thing. But if it's normal wear and tear, the way that we try to run our pavement management program is we try to do maintenance and reconstruction. So doing regular maintenance, it prolongs the life of the street, obviously. So your street may be something that just needs to be made black to maintain it and fill the holes.
Yeah, I've actually been trying for 3 years to get our entire block redone because 50–60% of the sidewalk are cracked and damaged and less than 3 years old.
The sidewalk or the street that's damaged, the
Sidewalk.
sidewalk? Okay.
And in fact, with the snow and the ice, we now have probably about 1 inch to 1.5 inch thick, wide crack that runs approximately 2 houses.
Okay.
So again,
We'll look at it.
I just want to make sure that we're spending money for new projects, that's great. But what are we doing about the projects that are not holding up? And that's what I need, that's my concerns with.
Understood.
And it's not just my house, I mean, it's right in my face, so it's obvious. It's not the only spot in the city. So
Understood.
that's why I'm concerned about that. Okay, now we're talking about buying a new street sweeper. Are we currently outsourcing that work?
We are going to be outsourcing the work. We are going to continue to do the main thoroughways, though, in the early morning, the Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if you live on Broadway, Ferry Street, Main Street, we will be continuing to do those early morning ones, as well as any accidents that occur or any special events. So we do need to keep our own sweeper.
So it's on the ability to-
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And just the last question I have is, what's the total amount that's going out for bond? I know we had this conversation.
19.7 million is proposed.
How much is that?
19.7 million is proposed.
And what are we looking at for long-term interest?
There's a projected debt schedule in tab 6, so you can see all the projects there, and there's a 5-year proposed interest rate and projected debt service payments for those projects. Fiscal year 16, you'll see typically it's just an interest payment, maybe on a bond anticipation note, or usually it's an interest payment, and then after 1 year, you got a principal and interest payment. So this first year will be just an interest-only budget, and then when we go out and sell the bonds, we'll have principal and interest going out in fiscal year 17 and beyond. And every project is different with regard to the mass laws and how they're amortized. Some projects are 5 years, and some of the longer infrastructure could be up to 30 years. So there's a projected year, useful life, the amount that we're proposing, and then debt schedule there for each project.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Counsel Hanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Don't know where to start, though, but I think my first question would be, how well did our capital improvement plan work last year? We know what we want to do this year, and what percentage of what we had proposed last year was completed or started or what? Is that in there somewhere that I missed?
No, I mean, it would be a long answer. I don't know if you want me to go through every project and give you a status, and I don't know if I'm actually prepared to do so.
Well, all right. Can you give us a list of, say, the past few years of what our CIP was?
Well, we have the fiscal year 15 in here, and I hide the other column, so you can see the fiscal year 15s on your 5th tab with the 5-year capital improvement plan. And then if there's specific projects, I can go back and go through some of the older projects and capital items. Most of the capital items money has been put out to buy a specific piece of equipment or vehicle, those are pretty much, you set them up and you knock them down. Some of the stuff that may be still in the works are capital projects themselves. Roadway repairs, for example, we still have some projects that, you know, we ran out of time in calendar year 14, so we had to shut it down until the snow melted, so we can give you a status on some of the roadway projects, et cetera, but, again, it's kind of, it'd be tough for me to go through that all right at this very moment and give you an update.
Maybe I'll drop in and we can discuss it.
Sure, absolutely.
I've done that before. I want to ask a question, what Peter, Councilman Napolitano was saying about the perpetual care, and you said that we would pay ourselves back. First of all, first question, do we have to pay ourselves back?
Yeah, we're not allowed to spend principal amounts on that money. We got special legislation to allow us to essentially borrow off that principal to pay ourselves back.
Okay, so
Kind of like a passbook loan, I guess.
we have to pay it back.
Yeah, but we'd pay ourselves
The
back
question
with
was,
interest.
I didn't exactly hear how long it would take, or what method you would be using to pay it back, like how much per year, or how many years it would take to pay it back.
I haven't set up a schedule for that yet, but we can pay it back. We can do a 5-year amortization. I haven't hammered that down exactly yet. I'm waiting to see if it goes forward, we'll borrow that money and we can pay it back, but it'll just be through appropriation.
I think we should know these things, because, you know, your whole plan
I'd
is
say a
over
plan-
25 million, and I don't know what it was your last year.
I'd say 5-year amortization on a plan. Planning, the national laws allow you to bond for 5 years on capital plans,
So
designs.
what we see now for the FY16 will be all paid off in 5 years? Is that what we're saying?
For the cemetery.
Or just the cemetery? I mean, I'm talking
That's what
about
you
everything,
asked
know.
about.
I mean, I have,
Oh, again, on the debt service projections, you'll have every project that we request bonding on, and you'll have different amortization schedules. So, for instance, we have projected 10-year amortization on the ladder truck, 5 years on all the capital equipment for city services, 5 years on the purchase of the light poles, 20 years on park construction, 5 years on park design, open space, 20 years, new city hall, 20 years.
It's the green one in your book, looks like this.
So it's all listed there. Again, it all goes by chapter 44, section 7 or 8 of the Mass General Law, so.
I'm sure that you folks have put a lot of time into this, and invaluable time, I trust, you know, and I know that you know what you're talking about. But I don't expect that I'm gonna understand what you did in a half an hour, or an hour, or a day, or a week even, you know? So, I think we really have to spend a lot of time on this if we are expected to know it. I just don't wanna say, yeah, okay, pass it. And I never wanna pass it because I don't understand it. So I think that this is a tough subject, and I'm really concerned about all of it. I mean, we talked about Chapter 90 money and said we're gonna get $600,000 back.
650.
We're
that-
estimating
is-
$650,000 for fiscal year
Whatever it was.
16.
Is that from the $100 million?
No,
Is that from the $300 million?
Well, the state
that's
sells-
for next year.
The state sells bonds. The state sells bonds every year to fund Chapter 90. And
Okay.
we're estimating that when the state sells their Chapter 90 bonds, the apportioned amount for the city of Everett will be $650,000.
Well,
It
the
could be
government-
more, it could be less, but
The
we're
So
not
that's-
gonna spend that money. Last year, they actually increased it by $300,000, so.
But for the 5 years before that, we got 650 a year, averaged.
I mean, the governor put $1 million into this, which is like 40,000, I think 40,000 more than he did last year. And after that, he put $200 million into it. And now he's added another $30 million for road repair and so forth. And we get a percentage of that, and is that, any of that in the amount of money that you said we're gonna get?
So that was for this year. So we got an additional $300,000 for this year, plus an additional $80,000 in pothole money for this year. This is talking about next year.
This
So-
is for 16
Right.
proposed.
I know,
So
but
15
what I'm trying to understand
Yeah.
is, how is that working, you know? And next year, we'll probably only get $100 million of that, because the $200 million was extra, so wasn't the $30 million.
Right,
So-
typically we get 650. We average 650 a year. This year, we got an extraordinary amount. We got 950. We were very lucky, actually, with the pothole money, over $1 million. But typically, what we get every year is 650. That's what the typical letter
The
is.
purpose of this document is to give a comprehensive view of what monies are coming in, not just from bonds, but from grants and other funding sources. So we would never spend any of that Chapter 90 money if it didn't materialize, but for purposes of
No, I
giving a
wasn't
picture,
saying that, but it's
we're
just one of
estimating
my questions, you know, that-
650,000.
that
We
I'm
hope
having.
it's more, it could be less, but we're just kind of going on historical averages.
Okay. I have lots of questions, but I'm gonna pass, and we have this coming up another night and everything, so maybe even tonight, but I know other people want to ask questions, so I'm gonna stop for the moment.
Before I turn the floor over, Councilor Marquez will be next. I just want to make sure that we're all clear. I want to make sure I'm clear as well. This is a general plan. The line items that are in here, questions obviously be asked about that. But if there is any funding that needs to happen, any transfer of funds, bonding,
For you.
anything of those, any issues of that nature, that needs to come up piece by piece before this council, correct?
So you vote on this all twice. Once will be the plan, and the second will be the appropriations, in several different facets. The only thing you will not vote on out of this entire plan would be anything that's grant-funded, or the item that would be voted on by the Disability Commission, which is a $50,000 item.
Okay, so grants, I understand that. So any kind of appropriation whatsoever, even though this is a master plan, the idea is that each line item as it comes forward, as you move through next phase, it would need to come in front of this council in order to be voted and appropriated.
Correct.
I think
Is that correct?
ideally, this plan is laid out before the council to vet through, and then what, the hope is that this plan is either adopted as submitted or modified, and by adopting the plan as submitted or modified, I would then come before you with the appropriation request. I mean, we could do a piecemeal, but hopefully the idea would be to vet through this and, you know, back up all the requests and to your satisfaction. And if you voted it as submitted, I would then come to the next meeting with bond authorization requests, appropriation requests from the capital improvement fund. Last year, I tried to submit bond requests with the plan. I think it didn't really send the right message. It was more trying to be efficient, but, what I'm hoping doesn't happen is that you approve this plan, and then when we come before you for bonding, then we have to bring up the whole thing again and start vetting through it again. So it's my hope that you vet through it, because a lot of the monies that would be appropriated for this have to come in the operating budget. So with, you know, in a perfect world, this would be vetted through and approved in some way, shape, or form before we submit the operating budget, so I can put the debt service payments in there, the appropriations in for the stuff from the operating budget, et cetera.
Okay. So I just wanted to clarify, both for myself and for the council, that as we're reviewing this, if we allow it to go forward, obviously we want to think about it, you know, ask whatever questions we need, but by approving it doesn't necessarily, we're not necessarily authorizing it right now. It will come before us again. Want to make sure the councils understand they'll have the opportunity to look at it case by case as it comes forward.
Still need to authorize the bond, still need to authorize the,
Thank you very much. Councilor Marquez, you have the floor.
Some things on there, obviously, I like it, some things that scare the hell out of me. Planning, design, and construction, just $300,000 just to go out to find out what we could do there.
which particular project, Council?
It'll be the plan, design and construction of the new city hall at the old Everett High School.
3 million.
3 million just to have them go in there and design it?
It's construction documents.
I know, did we approve? We have to approve the $3 million, obviously, for this to go on, right?
Yes.
Okay, so, because it's not, because obviously, as I read through here, we're looking for schoolrooms. You have plenty of schoolrooms up there, you don't seem to be, want to use the school as a school, you want to use the school, anything else but a school, which is concerning me, seeing that we have overflows all over the place, and we have wooden buildings down in Webster School, which we're going to air condition, instead of just doing the right thing and building a school with $1.5 million to find a school in the Woodlawn area.
Well, that's the feasibility study, so the MSBA is approved us going forward with a feasibility study for a new school. Typically, I think in the past, you've got about 80%
80%.
reimbursement on the building of schools, so that's, we're just following the
Yep.
process of MSBA on that.
You see, understand that whatever you're doing here, whatever you're spending, $3 million to explore something could lead to $40 million in improvements in that school.
Oh, I understand that,
All right, so,
Council.
I mean, wouldn't it be in this time to kind of tighten the belt a little bit? And I understand the infrastructure that we have to do, I understand the upgrades and equipment for the public safety and everything, but what I see here scares me, and I got a hard time when I ask someone to vote for me if I approve all this, and that's just my take on it.
Well, the Cavarian School was created for 900 students. There's currently 1,200 students in it. So what that proposal is to put an addition on to the Cavarian School.
Which would be smart.
Yes,
You can
so-
park underneath if you can do
Exactly.
that by law.
So
I
we need to
understand
do the
that.
feasibility study first. That's the requirement from MSBA. It would be reimbursed at 80%, so if we're talking $1.5 million, 80%, we'd end up paying $300,000 of that.
But in the meantime, why can't we use the schoolrooms up at Everett High School? Because they're being used now, obviously, by a charter school, right?
So the charter school offices are still in there, the charter school students are not in there anymore,
Yep.
they went to the new school in Peabody. We have discussed with the school department putting a school there, they haven't expressed any interest in it, and I think for two reasons. One, the cost of renovating a school is more than the cost of building new
But what does
typically.
it need to be renovated if you had a charter school? If it was appropriate for them, it's not appropriate for,
I don't
two
think,
different
and
laws?
Jim Sopo would be able to answer this better, but I do not think it has the ADA compliance and that is needed for a public
Yep.
school. Two, I don't believe that that school is in the area where the school department is finding their need. That really is the Woodlawn area and the high school area. And that's where they're seeing their overcrowding, not so much in this area. And that's why they've requested us to
and
look at
there'd
the
be no
Cavarian.
overcrowding down where all those new apartments are going in Ward 6 or Ward 1 down there?
Ward 6, Ward 1, maybe. More down at the Matty English, I would think.
just on Waters Ave today, I saw
Right.
something I couldn't believe there.
But the request from the school department has been focused more on the Woodlawn area and the high school area because that's where they're seeing the most overcrowding. I wouldn't want to speak for the schools, but that's what they have told us, and that's why we've gone forward with the request in the way that we have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor DeFlorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to the private contractors performing work in the city of Everett, whether it's a street or a sidewalk, what is the warranty on that?
It's different for every contract. Sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's 3 years, sometimes it could be, the roof at the high school is 30. It can be different for every contract. The crosswalks are one. The streets are actually longer. I don't know if Jerry, how long? Do you think it's 1 year for the streets? I thought the streets were a little longer because when we do them in the winter, it's usually a question. I can check into that for you.
Now, in regards to the streets that are being, like, you must have a list of when the streets are being done, say, 2010.
Yeah, we keep it.
Street 8 was done. Are we looking at the streets to see that there's nothing wrong with them? Because I see a lot of streets that do have, my street, basically, it was done 10 years ago, but 10 years, it's totally fallen apart. And being in the construction business, I know what the problem is. They've taken so much chemicals out of the cement, and so it's not as strong as it was 20 or 30 years ago.
So it may be hard to believe, but the payment management plan we did was actually 4 years ago. So this year, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and update it. So what will happen is that the company will come in and do an inventory of all the streets again. They actually visually go out and look at every single street, and they'll update our database for us, letting us know that this street was done in 2013, but it has these deficiencies that currently exist. This street was done in 2010, these deficiencies currently exist. And then what will happen is it will update it, and we'll be able to redo the formula that way. So yes, what we'll do is we'll do an inventory this year, because it's been 4 years, and we've done a substantial number of streets in the last 4 years.
Okay. My other question is, and this may be a question that you may not be able to answer, and you can give it to us on the 13th meeting, it's not a problem. What is the total bonds that the city has outstanding right now?
I do have
Between the
that.
schools and everything else?
I bring all this stuff, and what you're asking I didn't bring, but I can have that. I have that information.
That's
now, so-
okay. If you could bring that on the 13th, would be fine. What I'm trying to find out is how much we actually owe in bonds and how much we're gonna add to it, and when those bonds are gonna be coming off. So in other words, if we have an outstanding bond for a school that's coming off in 2016, say of 3 million, and we're adding another 3 million, I'm trying to
If you
get
have a copy,
checks and balances.
if you have a copy of the fiscal year 15 operating budget, I do have the total debt schedule for the entire city in it. If you have it here, I don't have mine with me, but I
That's
do,
okay.
I have that.
I
information.
do have it at home. I'll look at it. All right.
I believe
Thank
it's
you.
around 7 million right now, but, a lot of debt drops off in 2020. So a lot of this proposed debt that's coming in, we're hoping that, some of that other debt drops off and we can just kind of project and keep a good ratio of debt service as a regard to the total budget.
Yeah, I'm not too fond of bonding vehicles, because I figure by the time you get through with the bond, it's time to buy another one. So sometimes I feel like you're throwing good money after bad. I like to actually see us buy vehicles, don't get me wrong, but buy them outright.
Anything that's been bonded, anything we propose for bonding with regard to vehicles is more the heavy equipment. I didn't propose bonding anything that's less than $100,000, so I agree with you. Operating budget or something to that effect. Most of the stuff that we're gonna bond is more like, you call it a vehicle, but it's really heavy equipment. It's, big dump trucks and 10-wheel trucks, et cetera. So, it'd be great to just pay cash for all those, but again, we're trying to leverage, the favorable debt rates that we have right now with some of this equipment and the useful life, but we're not looking to bond administrative vehicles or police cruisers or anything like that. We're looking to either use one-time monies or just build it right into the operating budget.
Okay, well, I know the casino's a long way out, but when the casino comes in, maybe this is something we should look into, is to buying so many vehicles every year to replace the old ones instead of keeping.
We're kind of doing that through this process, but I agree, we're gonna, this capital plan continues to evolve, and, you know, it's, even though you get it once a year, I mean, this is a 12-month cycle on this stuff, things come up, you know, we have equipment breakdown, we have, you know, we had a rough winter, we lost a lot of equipment, so we're adjusting this constantly, but you get one copy every year, so it's the snapshot of where we are at this point, so.
Okay, thank you.
Counsel Sani.
Thank you. I'm looking at the fiscal year 2015 capital, what you spent already, and then you're looking at the department request for 2016. So it's almost like 3 million on the first page that they're requesting for equipment. More this year? for next year?
4.855 million. I
Right,
think,
and last
right?
year, and the year before was 1.495, right?
That's right.
So they're looking for about 3 million more, 3.4 million more.
Yeah, well, you got a large ladder truck in there, which is $1.2 million. You have the purchase of the utility poles was $1 million, but if you look at the, purchasing the light poles, actually $650,000 of that 1.1 million is grant dollars, and then the savings on the utilities will pay it back in 2 years, so, I mean, sometimes the numbers look higher, but you dig down a little bit and you find that, you know, you pull out the ladder truck and you pull out those light poles, that's $1.3 million. And again, we had a very rough winter. We lost a lot of equipment. We really took a toll on a bunch of our city services equipment. So, yeah, it's heavy on DPW equipment this year for sure.
And on the next page, parks and open space, you have 1.2, and then you have 7.137. And that's like a 6 million increase.
Yeah.
Grants and bond, the grants, that's, we don't pay back, right? So we don't, how much in grants do we expect?
We have $600,000 worth of grant, $400,000 worth of grants for the Sacramone Park, and we have $600,000 worth of grants for Lower Florence. So the net debt service is $2.6 million and $800,000. And if you look at the next tab, you'll see the net debt service that's being proposed for those two projects.
The other question I have is regarding purchase of open space. And it said, I believe you said next to Best Buy? Is that little land?
It's the little
And
land.
then 1.3 million?
No, so the Best Buy lot is about $350,000. The rest of that would be for other acquisitions throughout the year that we potentially might do for open space. But the $350,000 for Best Buy is that little tiny square, yeah.
To purchase that, and then
Yeah.
we could put toward the park?
And we put it towards the park, and that's based on appraisals that have already been done
Okay.
by the
Yep.
city, not by Best
And
Buy.
I don't know if you can do this, and I don't know if I see the equipment being bought and everything. Is there a way we can break down just each department, what they have bought in last year, and then what they want this year? Just so it'll be easier maybe, so people can look at each department
Sure.
versus everything all running in one sheet. I understand what it, for myself, but
So you want to see like fire, public, police, city
Yeah.
services grouped that way? We can do that for
separately,
them.
and
Yeah.
then maybe a little bigger, so we can see a little bigger.
Okay.
And then this way, we can look at the equipment, what they have bought already last year, and we can say, okay, what else could they use? Or maybe we say, let's wait on a couple more vehicles, we can eliminate from the next
Okay.
meeting, might help out.
We can do that.
Thank you. I'm all set.
Counsel Megan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a few questions. Please bear with me. Just to start off, you have about, between the Pollen and the Webster, separate projects here altogether, we have a total of $4.5 million between the cafeteria, the AC at the Webster, the repavement, and the classrooms at the Pollen. Would it be possible, to get a general contractor to put this all under one thing and maybe try to get a reduced rate if we combine all these projects together at the same time instead of doing all
So
separate projects and
The
stuff like
biggest
that?
issue for the school department is they have to have all the projects done over the summer. So they basically try to get everything done in July and August. And it puts us at a real time constraint. So I'm not sure if one contractor would be able to do all of that work at once. That would be my only concern about that, because they do work on a very short time frame.
Well, one of the things, Mr., is, for instance, classroom at the Powell Inn. I mean, that could be done over the summer, of $1.5 million. I mean, adding
They typically
classrooms on.
try to. If you remember correctly, when we did all that other work at the Parlin, when we did the roof and the,
Right.
the timbers and the floors and the windows, that kind of ongoing project, that they tried to do that all over the summer just because of safety reasons of having people in the building and the disruption. So typically, they try to get the projects all done over the summer, but it's certainly something that we could look into. The cafeteria is being paid for by the cafeteria receipts, though, so that's at least $1.5 million of that.
Okay, thank you on that. The other thing, I just have some individual questions. I know, like I said, I believe this is the night to ask them instead of keep coming back. I'd rather, for everybody's up here tonight, personally myself, I'd rather ask the questions and get them answered. One is, how come so much for the ADA swing for $150,000 at Glendale Park? Why so much for that?
It's the whole swing set that's being put in. It will have ADA swings, but it's the whole swing set that's being put in. But there's new safety requirements now that you have to have a certain landing space, a certain type of surface. So all of that will have to be done as well.
Okay, so it's not just a matter of putting in the set itself? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And it'll be put on, if you walk into the park and you're looking kind of at the high school, the place they're going to put them is right to the left, that grass spot to the left.
Okay. One of the things you also had in there was the smart meter, and, proposed here for the cost of $75,000. On something installing like that for like vandalism and anything, what type of assurance that we would have? Like say it didn't work or it got vandalized or something like that, how would, with that?
So if it didn't work, we would make sure there was a warranty from the company, but it would be covered under our insurance, our liability insurance.
All right, and then some individual ones on the cost. These are portable radios. I know nobody from the police.
No,
department,
Chief Maisie's here.
Oh, is he?
Yep, he's in the back. Yep.
It's actually just, I have a couple of questions on. One is, it's saying 1/5 of the radios, Chief.
Counsel, would you like the chief before us?
Yes, please, thank
If we
you.
could please have the chief before us?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief Mazie.
Good evening.
I know 1/5 of the radios, are they, evidently looking at these, are they, $5 grand each?
That's correct, and that includes the radio, spare battery, microphone that connects to the radio, that usually one up in the lapel,
Okay.
and a holder. Current radios that we have, portables, are about 7 years old, and they're starting to rack up some issues that are becoming too costly to repair. And it's starting to meet the life cycle, so the goal is to start replacing, the worst ones and do it over about a 4 or 5 year period.
Yeah, no, like I said, I definitely support this 100%, because, especially being out there and, working in public transportation and, with safety and, like I said, sometimes not having good communication is very, very important, so especially when you're out there and, like I said, it's important, so I support this. The other thing is on the tasers, it says some of them are old and aging. How old are these tasers, and do you know what the usual life expectancy of a taser is?
Sure. So we finally got into the taser business a few years ago, and the initial product that we received from them is now their old technology. They no longer make it. They're no longer going to be servicing it. We've only had a few minor problems with them, but we're really trying to outfit the whole department. Right now, we have about 44, 45 tasers deployed. The goal is to put one on every officer's duty belt from me on down. I should say from the bottom up. I'll be the last one to get one, but from the bottom up. And, there's an obviously expense to them, but they've shown to be a good tool in gaining compliance, especially with people who are violent, or in many cases when people were dealing with mental illness, to just put a stop to it before people get hurt.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm all set with the chief. I just have a couple other questions. Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. One is, crosswalks, Melissa. I know you have a cost of here, those enhanced $40,000. Now, most of them seem like they're in pretty good condition, but I did notice there was a couple of them that got beat up pretty bad. I don't know if that was just from plowing or what it was, but is this something that you definitely think going forward that we should continue doing, or do you think it's something that it's,
Sure. So a couple of them did get beat up. We just had a conversation about this. Julia's just in inventory them on Thursday, and that inventory is going to be forwarded over to the contractor. We have a year warranty on them, and we'll make sure that he comes back and fixes any that have been lifted that were done in the last year. We have gotten very good feedback on them from the community. People like having them around schools, parks. We've had requests from some churches for them. We've had requests from some of the elderly housing for them. So I think that they are popular. Mainly because people see them, so we're finding that cars are likely to stop. So it is a project that we'd like to continue into the future.
okay. And then just the last couple ones I have are for the, one of the gentlemen from City Services, just asked him on some equipment. I don't know whoever wants to. Thank you.
Good evening, Jerry Navarro, DPW Director.
Thank you for appearing. On the excavator and the 4-ton roller, I know, like, for instance, on the excavator, it says, I mean, what is any idea what, because the cost is $95,000, again, we spend $10,000 to $15,000 per year. I mean, I assume we would get more than 6-7 years out of it. I don't know what an excavator lasts usually. I'm just looking at the benefit versus leasing it versus, owning it.
Well, obviously, it'll be in our hands at all times, not, waiting for the rental season part of it.
Okay,
I don't know the exact lifetime expectancy of it, though.
okay. And on the roller itself, I assume, like, again, it's, what do we do now for it?
We currently have a 1.5-ton roller right now, which only does potholes and small patches. This one would actually allow us to use for bigger patches and compact it even better. So potholes would, withstand hopefully, the weather seasons.
Okay, that's it. Thank you. I'm all set. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilman McKinnon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could we have the chief of police back up, please? Sorry, Jay.
Chief Mazie, please come forward. If I may too, I would suggest that if there are any questions for an individual department head while we have them here, so that we do musical chairs, why don't we address all those? I'll leave it to the discretion of the council. That would just be my suggestion.
Good idea.
So, all right, Councilman McKinnon, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the chief. Chief, these radios that we're talking about, are they Motorola, the Motorola type, or?
We use Motorola, yes, sir. Portable radios, yes.
And you stated they were 7 years old?
And
What's the
yeah.
average life capacity?
Well, it depends. I mean, so our radios we issue one to every officer. These radios are used, I mean, they can be in use 16 hours a day sometimes between working, regular shift, and if someone's working an overtime, a detail, investigations, whatever. But, yeah, the ones we have now have served us well. And by the way, the ones we have had, these radios were purchased 7 years ago to a federal grant to the Metro Boston Homeland Security region. So we got those at no expense to the city at the time. They are expensive. I mean, they're usually a top of the line portable radio. But for example, like a lot of them have a digital screen on them. It tells you what channel you're on and so on. The screens are starting to go. Those type of issues.
So they're just breaking down?
They break down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, they come with the charger? I'm
Correct.
assuming?
Charger. Yeah. It's all. Yeah. So the
But
price
each one-
price includes the charger, the radio, spare battery, holder, microphone.
Okay, is there any other grants out there now that we could actually look at for these?
Yeah. No. I mean, I looked into that, the possibility of seeing if we can use fundings through the Metro Boston Homeland Security funding stream, and that's not going to happen anytime soon.
What about the tasers as well? Is there any grants out there for that? or is
Well,
it just
we have bought some of the tasers with grant money, but the grants we've had access to are small amounts, not enough to purchase what we need to outfit the whole department.
Okay, and that's the goal, to outfit every officer? with
Correct.
tasers, Correct.
We were at a portion where we had a original 20 tasers, and we had a sign out type per shift, signing them out with the holster. It became problematic because a number of the holsters ended up breaking because officers were taking them on and off their belt. It's really designed to go on your belt, stay in your belt, and
So they
use
should
it.
take it home with them, correct?
Correct, yeah, so it stays with them, just like a firearm, radio. It's an issued piece of equipment. Obviously, we train everybody in the use of them as well, initial training and then follow-up training annually.
Let me see. Thank you. With that in mind, I mean, so now there's no additional funding out there that we could resource out?
At this moment, no. No, I mean, certain grant streams of funding are for certain items. Some allow you to buy weapons, some don't allow you to buy weapons. We usually tap what we can. We've tapped grants that you can buy tasers, and we've done that. But again, the amounts that are available, $20,000 is not gonna get you, a lot of tasers.
Yeah. Now, the 75 would, though? It would actually, there's 75?
75,000?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I mean, it would outfit the rest of the department.
That would
Yeah.
do the whole department?
Yep.
Okay, and that would update everyone's tasers that actually?
Correct, we'd be in pretty good shape, yeah, for a number of years.
So the older versions, what would you do with them?
Well, we're gonna hold them. I mean, I was under the, I wanted they have a turn-in program. They don't give you much value on them, though.
Yeah.
My goal is to keep them in use and, run them into the ground, basically, till we can't use them anymore. They do have a, so they have
the
a,
officers will be trained on both sides, both?
it's standard, there's not much change. Like one model we have has a double cartridge. So if you have two offenders or if you miss your first round, you have a second one. Some are single mode. You can reload, but it's all the same. Turn them on the same. There's not a lot to them.
Okay.
It's kind of point and shoot type of deal. But understanding what effect they have is the more important thing, and then the commands and all that.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I had for you tonight. Thanks a lot,
Okay.
Chief Perry. I just have one question for Chief Butler. Would that be a problem?
Well, it's up to the council. If you want, we can ask questions to Chief Mazie and then bring Chief Butler afterward,
Yeah.
or
Any for this, Chief?
I'll hold your
Yep.
spot. Do you have any other questions of the chief?
I'm awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Council Hand, you're next in queue. I think you
Thank you.
said you did have a question for the chief, correct? Okay. Great. Council Handler.
On the radio, Chief,
Yes, sir.
I see that the one that we have here, that picture is 10 years old. And is it still operating? The one that you show in the picture here?
I'd have to take a look at which one they, I don't have it in front of me, sir. I'm sorry.
What's the number on it, John?
10 years old.
Taser or radio? What are we talking about? Correct.
And is it still operating?
I can't speak for that particular radio, I'm not sure. Yeah, so, I mean, some of these models may be operating and some are not operating.
So I'm saying that does everyone have their own private radio? I mean, I have.
Everyone gets issue one, yes, sir.
They have their own. So the ones that aren't working,
So what happens is we have a cache of radios that you come in, hey, my radio's down, we give you a spare. The problem is we're out of spares at this point. So, some of the damage, the problems associated with these radios are so costly
Okay.
that it's not worth spending the money on.
I'm looking at the explanation. It says you're going to replace 1/5 of the radios?
That's right.
Okay, and so now I'm going to ask you, what's the condition of the other 4/5?
Well, they're operational. We're at a point right now where our catch is low. We're trying to plan ahead. I don't want to have 30, 40 radios going down at once, and they have nothing to replace them. So the plan is to do it over a multi-year period. And we would take the worst radios. For example, if this gets funded, we would take the worst functioning radios, pull them out, issue the new ones. Ones that have minor issues, we would try to fix up and keep those as spares. Ones that are too far gone, we would get rid of.
Okay, my concern is that, has a radio ever failed in its duty?
Oh, yeah, yes.
And is
Yeah.
there some sort of a backup, beside another, he's out stuck alone all by himself?
So, yeah, if you're on the street, I mean, we have mobile units in the vehicles. I mean, the good thing about Everett is, I mean, it's a city, there's people around, there's officers around, but, yeah, no, radios fail. I mean, they could fail for a number of reasons, not just the functionality. The batteries could be weakened or low. Officer, forgot to change out his battery. There's a whole number of things. Battery might not be mounted properly when they snap them in. There's a whole bunch of things that can happen.
I'm kind of concerned if the radio fails and, it's something that we have to have help right away and something happens, could there be a possible suit against the city for not having a radio that operates properly? And before you answer, I just want the chief of the fire department to know I'm going to ask him the same question.
Sure.
So, don't feel
Well, I mean, there's obviously training involved. We want to make sure our equipment's inspected. It's up to proper standards. We don't want to put out. I mean, that's the whole idea of having a plan, is we don't want to be getting to a point where we have too many radios that are down. We are in a position right now, we don't have a lot of spares. I mean, we brought our complement of officers up to 101. You know, obviously when you hire, that means everyone needs a new, you know, additional gun, radio, taser, equipment. We want to make sure everybody's uniform on what they have. I would never want to, I try not to put people out there in a position where we're going to give them equipment that fails. This plan, I think, puts us in a good position to start replacing them. I mean, I'm hedging my bets that we don't have more go down than what we're looking for in this next fiscal year.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions to the chief? Counsel Simonelli.
Thank you, President, through you too. I have no, I need to talk about, the sergeant I don't need to talk to, I mean, chief, I'm sorry.
Okay.
To, the auditor.
Are there any other questions? Is there any other questions of the chief?
Did you have
No. I have one, if I could
yes,
just
sir.
ask it, Counselor, and then we'll go right back to you, if you don't mind. There's the photo of the taser, and Chief, I know that it said that's older technology. Is that bulky, or it just looks bulky from the photo? I don't know if you've got the benefit of the photo. It looks like a
yeah, well,
firearm, maybe a little larger than a firearm?
Correct. A little lighter, size similar, little different. Not, it's not heavy.
Okay.
A little bulky, yeah, but the problem is we give so much equipment to the officers today.
Yeah.
It's where do you put it? So the smaller the officer, the more problem they have to put it. The other thing is we allow our officers to wear external carriers for vests. And with the MOLLE system, you can actually put stuff on your vest as well as it distributes the weight as well.
Okay.
So, no, it's not, there's not a huge weight difference in the models, if that's really what you're getting at.
I didn't know if there was a weight, size, it's relatively about the
No,
same?
I think the newer models are a little smaller.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, I think the model, let me see what's shown here, might be the one with the double cartridge.
It says T-48, I don't know if that helps you. It's on page 11 of the handout.
Going the wrong way with it, can't I? No. I think my page is stuck together.
I think you might have a different handout than what we have.
Yeah, I think the newer model is a little slimline than that one.
That
Yeah.
looks pretty
Yeah.
bulky, maybe it's just.
The front end of it's a little wider.
Okay, great. I don't have any other questions of the chief. Are there any other questions of the chief? Seeing none, thank you very much,
Okay,
Chief.
thank you.
Counsel Simonelli, I apologize, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, through you to maybe the city auditor, the auditor here. We're talking about the old city hall. It would move, this city hall is gonna be moved into the old city hall, is that true?
The old high school, I
The old
believe.
high school, also the police department,
That's the plan.
okay? And how long would that take? Is there a period of time it's gonna take to get it complete?
I imagine it takes several years, subject to appropriation. We would do construction documents and then put out the bid, but a project that size would, I'd imagine, take a couple of years.
So once we get this completed, we can start moving right in on it, is that true?
That's the plan.
Okay. Okay, and, what are they gonna do with this city hall here? I mean, what's the plans for the city hall now? The present city hall, right here?
I mean, I'm not prepared to answer that question. I don't know for any certainty. I don't know if Melissa has any insight on the proposed plan on that, but,
We need schools, we need school buildings, we need space. That might be a good idea.
We're actually considering this site for a fire department.
This will be the fire.
We were considering putting the fire department here, yes, in the
So you put-
future. We think this would be a good potential site for the fire department, and then go ahead and surplus and sell. Chief Butler's making noises behind me, but go ahead and surplus and sell the 2 existing fire stations,
Okay,
or the 2 existing that are closer, perhaps.
That sounds, okay. The recreation center again now. the new recreation again, it's 350,000. When is that construction gonna be done? They've been talking about trying to fix a bathroom in there for the last 6 months. When is this gonna take effect? Same way as it,
So this
as
would,
once we approve this?
so this would just be design of the rec. It wouldn't be any construction at the rec. Obviously, we've moved everything up to the old high school right now anyway, but what you would see here would be construction documents to basically take that recreation center down completely and do a rebuild of a bigger facility. And it would probably be, again, a several-year plan. You wouldn't see an appropriation for adding construction until a future year.
And the bathroom's gonna be fixed?
We're doing small repairs to that bathroom.
Well, Mr. Delasola.
Yeah, we talked about that quite a bit.
don't really get to
It's okay.
I got one more thing here. This purchase of the utility poles, are you talking about the aluminum ones?
I'm talking about the light poles.
The
Yep.
light poles.
Yeah, the light poles.
You're not talking about the wooden ones and the double poles?
I'm talking about, so any poles that are owned by National Grid, some of them could technically be double poles, so we'd have them take them down first. We're not buying any double poles. But we're talking about any light poles, so any of the light pole fixtures that you see, we would be purchasing
So
them.
we wouldn't call National Grid, would do that?
We'd be
in-
doing the repairs ourselves now, yes.
That's a good idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Counsel Sechetta.
Yes. On the Ford Escapes for the ISD and the CS, you got 2 to add to a fleet of inspectional services. How many do we have now? And we're adding 2 more, so how many would we have in total for the ISD department?
Sure. You want me to have Jim come up and answer
Yeah,
that for you? Okay.
Thank you, Jim. If you just identify yourself for the record.
Good evening, members of the committee. Jim Soper, ISD Director.
Thank you, Mr. Sober.
Thank you.
You're asking for 2 vehicles to add to the fleet. How many do you have now in your fleet for the ISD?
Currently, we have 9 vehicles for ISD.
So you're gonna have 11 now.
That's correct.
On the other Ford Escapes, CS, that's code enforcement, is that correct?
Th-
You want 3 more vehicles?
Those are for city services.
Oh, city services, okay. So you're gonna add to that 3 new Ford Escapes?
That's what's being proposed.
Yeah. How many do they have now?
Are you speaking of city services or ISD?
City services.
Okay, I don't
I'll
have
get
that
back to
answer.
you on your account.
Okay.
3 vehicles for 7 people.
3 vehicles, so now you're gonna have 5 for 7 people.
We propose 6. 3 plus 3 would be 6 more.
I'm sorry, 6. So each
Correct.
person in city service is gonna have their own vehicle.
That's what we're proposing,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Now, in the case of both ISD and city services, are any of these vehicles going home? Are they all parked here at City Hall at night?
In the case of city services, 2 vehicles go home every night. My car goes home every night.
Inspectional services.
And inspectional services, sorry. And inspectional services, 2 cars go home every night. My car goes home every night, and the car that belongs to Frank Nuzzo, the director of code enforcement, goes home every night.
So we have a fleet of roughly 17 Ford Escapes for city services and ISD, 11 and 6. Is that correct?
I don't know that they're all Ford Escapes. We're proposing.
Well, whatever, we're gonna have 17 cars in the fleet for the 2 departments.
That's, I'd have to verify the number, but yeah, the Ford Escapes are vehicles that comply with the Greens Community Act that we've passed, so certain vehicles administratively have to have certain fuel savings and such, so all the different departments that have requested vehicles, we decided to buy the Ford Escape so we can have some efficiencies of repairs and vehicle parts, et cetera, so, and that complies with the Greens Community Act.
Getting to the Ford Escapes, the question is, we're asking for $30,000 for each one of them.
That's right.
If I were to go out and buy a Ford Escape, I'm pretty sure I could buy one for less than $30,000.
Okay, Gotcha.
Well, those vehicles are actually $28,895 quoted. I got quotes for those vehicles, and those vehicles contains things that you wouldn't normally buy, such as they'll have a speaker in them. So if we're driving down the street and someone's forcing snow into the side from their sidewalk into the street, we have the ability to speak over a speaker, so we don't have to get out of the vehicle. We don't have to engage people in some fisticuffs or any of that going on. And we also have the ability to put on warning lights. We get those with blinkers, flashing lights in the corners. So if we have to pull over to the side of the road, we've got white lights that flicker. They don't, not confused with the police, not confused with DPW, but it keeps my guys and girls safe on the side of the road. So that's also involved in those as well. So,
And then some of the extra dollars are just for marking them up and putting the emblems on them and any other types of things that we need to do to make them uniform and identifiable as city service vehicles.
Thank you, Mr. Soper.
You're welcome.
I have some other questions, but not for you, Mr. Soper. Thank
Okay.
you.
Are there any other questions for ISD? Council McKenna? We'll absolutely get back to you, Councilman. I just figured instead of having them hop up and down,
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Sopel. Mr. Sopel, you stated that there was 2 cars that do go home.
that's correct.
That's yourself and Mr. Nuzzo?
That's correct.
And what are those cars utilized for when you're taking them home? Just so we have an idea of what's going on.
The car that Frank uses and I use are used to respond to emergency situations
Such
that we
as a
get called
fire or
out.
something like that?
That's correct. So we'll get called out to a fire, or we'll get called out to, typically when we see it, when there is a fire, there's a problem in that house as well, such as an illegal apartment. So once we have control of that property, with the fire department has control, then we can enter and we can collect evidence. Once the fire department leaves, we can't get in, so we have to respond quickly on those.
How often does that happen?
I'm going to say I've been out probably 4 times this year, myself. Mike Desmond, who also responds to these things, he's
he have a
probably
car
been out.
also?
He does not. He takes his own car from Peabody to the town and just to the city and goes to the scene right from there. So sometimes he's called directly by 911.
Now, what does Mr. Nuzzo do? He does the same act?
He does the same thing. He'll show up to the scene at the same time too as well.
And how long has he been, I mean, how many times has he gone out?
He gets called out more than I do. He gets called out on weekends. We have, as you know, 2 people who work over the weekends. Sometimes they get in a jam. Things need to be taken care of. Someone needs to step in and manage at that point in time. And that's when Frank's here, because he's in the city 24/7, and he's always willing to step in and out.
I just wanted you to give me an overlay of what those vehicles are utilized for, that you're not just taking them home and sitting there and,
No.
you know, okay. Is the gas also allocated on a city funds as well?
That's correct. We go down to the city services, and we have a new system that city services has put in, and all the gas is metered.
Okay. And what is the total on the 2 vehicles?
I don't have that information for you, but I will say
Can you get it
honest.
to us by the next meeting, actually?
Absolutely.
13th.
Yes,
On the 13th?
absolutely.
Thank you, Jim. I'm all set.
Any other questions for ISD? Seeing none? Thank you very much, Jim.
Thanks.
Council Sechetta, you have the floor.
Yes, I don't know who might answer this question, but on a stadium lighting, what type of lighting are we gonna put in that stadium? Do you know, is it LED or is it straight floodlighting as we have now?
Hold on a second, Counselor?
It's the same exact lights that we have now, it's just gonna be an additional, light being put in.
Well, LED lighting is a lot more efficient, and
I
I
have
believe
it,
that utility companies give money back when you use LED lighting.
It's certainly more efficient, and you have to change light bulbs less often, and I have, hold on one second, and I can show you, page 25. I have a quote for it. So the big humongous packets that you all just got, they actually have the backup from most of these items. Humongous, he liked that. Sometimes there's quotes, sometimes there is actual quotes for vehicles. So there, on page 25 of the big packet, it tells us exactly what we're gonna be getting. So it's additional lighting at the 50-yard line, so that we can cover the entire athletic field, as well as the, as well as the bleachers. I'm just looking to see if it says if it's LED or not. So it will be engineered, 2 new poles being put in. It's being served from its own designated conduit. And it doesn't say if it's LED or not, but I can find that out for you for the next meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to know.
No problem.
Okay.
Just for everyone's benefit, those big packages should be put in your last tab in your book. Unless it was, in case it wasn't clear. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
No. Trying to get rid of them.
I was impressed with those clips.
We don't throw anything away, that's why we got those big old clips.
Council Sachetta, you still have the floor. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, on the playgrounds, back, I don't know how long ago, both of you were sitting here and I discussed the monies that are spent on playgrounds in the past 4 or 5 years. How many millions of dollars were spent on playgrounds? And it was to get a figure from you people as to what we spent on playgrounds over the past 4 or 5 years. I never got that.
That's my
figure.
fault. We'll get that for you before the meeting on Monday.
I'd
I apologize.
appreciate it very
It's
much.
gonna be a lot, I can tell you that.
Thank you.
Are you all set, Counselor?
No.
I'm sorry. I can't see you over
On
there.
the city services, could I speak to Mr. Navarro, please?
Sure.
You're adding to the fleet a 10-wheel dump truck and a 6-wheel dump truck, one for $230,000, another for $160,000. How many dump trucks do we have now in the city?
Currently, I believe we have 4.
4? Do any of them have 10 wheels or 6 wheels?
Yes.
They do. Why is it necessary to have more?
We need to, obviously, through this past winter season, they took quite a beating, and we're going to look to replace,
Are these to replace?
not all of them, but at least 2 of them.
Because it says here to add.
And add. Well, that's why we're asking for 2.
Okay. On a sidewalk plow, didn't we buy one last year for about $160,000 or something?
This year, we had 3 out there during the snow removal season, and we had 2 that were ours, and 1 was our rental, I believe.
We rented one?
I'm sorry, rented 2.
Or rented two? So we need this additional one now?
Absolutely.
That's all for you, Mr. Navarro.
Okay.
I have one more question for either Melissa or Mr. Viskey.
Do we have any other questions for city services while we have them here? Did you have a question for city services, Counselor? Okay. Counselor Sachetta, I promise we'll go right back to you once we're done with city
Okay.
services. Counselor McKinnon?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Navarro. Mr. Navarro, it was stated that they're going to be outsourcing for the street sweeping?
Correct.
There's 2 down currently now?
Correct.
Okay. And we're going to anticipate on getting another street sweeper coming in, correct?
Yes, because we still be handling the Tuesday, Friday main drags and weekends, and obviously special events, and God forbid there was an accident for
And
debris.
What was the amount that we needed to obtain that again?
To repair the 2 we have on hand,
Just the brand new one?
the brand new one was $210,000.
Okay. And that would give us just one, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Also, we're outsourcing, who are we outsourcing to? What's the contractor and how much are they being outsourced?
Well, currently, we're still actually working on that, the specs on that.
The what?
We had to rebid.
So it's out to bid now?
Mhm.
Okay. And what are we anticipating that's going to be costing?
Roughly a year, or it's going to be probably a 3-year contract, so
About,
I would say probably close to $400,000.
about 400,000? Okay. So it's 400,000 plus the 210 or so for a new one, correct?
Yeah, obviously, the 210 would be our own street sweeper.
Yeah, and we'd still be outsourcing to the tune of 400,000?
Yes, because they'll be handling the money through Friday roads.
Okay. Thank you for that.
No problem.
All set.
Counselor Hanlon, you're next. Do you have a question for city services?
Yes, one question.
Okay. You have the floor.
Page 14, we show a city vehicle, I think it's a city vehicle that's got some front end damage to it. Page 15, we have
Yes. Yes, we do. I would believe so.
Oh, sorry, thank you very much. Then, my question is, why hasn't it been?
Well, obviously, we've handled our own claims through the amount of damage that's been throughout the city through the snow removal process, so we're just getting around to that now. We've been handling all the resident claims currently for the last 2 months.
So we should then, and I don't mean to put you on the spot with this, but we should see no vehicles that are operating in the city that have any body damage on them?
Well, we still have to conduct city business every day, so, I mean, if some of them have a dent in it, we're going to utilize those vehicles.
They're planned to be repaired, though?
Yes.
See some vehicles that are same dent for a long time.
Correct.
Okay.
That's why we're asking for so much right now.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for city services? If I may, from the chair, I have a couple real quick ones. Jerry, I think that we said we were renting 2 sidewalk plows?
Correct.
Do you know how much the cost is per, I don't know, is it per season? How do you rent them? Do you rent them per season, or
It was 14,000 for the 2.
for the season? So
Correct.
seven apiece?
Correct.
Okay. And we own 1, I think, right? Or no?
Currently?
Yeah.
1.
Okay, great. And then there was a request for, I think, a 10-wheel dump truck and a 6-wheel dump truck. Do we need both? Could you speak to the difference of what each of them?
Well,
do?
obviously-
Probably weight capacity, but,
Obviously, the capacity of taking the sand around, and obviously, this year, the snow removal would handle bigger size, the 6-wheel compared to the 10-wheel.
okay. Because I know we're looking for a couple of, were they F-150s or 350s?
F-350s.
Okay, so between those, could we survive without the 10, or could we skip the 6, or what, why do we need both, I guess?
What would better, be better access for us to remove the snow? I mean, no one went through a winter like this past season, and it would have greatly helped us this year to have both of them additional.
Okay. And if we were to choose one over the other, which would you prefer to have? The bigger capacity, or is the smaller capacity more functional?
I would have to ask my fleet manager, but I would have to say the 10-wheel dump.
Okay.
10-wheel dump.
I have no other questions. If there are no other questions, we'll excuse them. Thank you very much. Yeah, Sal, I think you had the floor. Is that correct? Okay.
Mr. Biscay, on the enhanced crosswalks, an additional $40,000 in this capital improvement budget. I asked this question, I believe, before. How much did we actually spend on these crosswalks last year? Was over a couple $100,000, is that correct?
Yeah, one quick thing, I noticed that the $40,000 that's in the PowerPoint, it should actually be $100,000. I think we typoed that, so that's, we're requesting $100,000 for crosswalks. That 40,000 is a typo. I apologize for that. We spent $137,000 on crosswalks last year. And
there's gonna be
I think
another
before
100.
that, there was a $75,000 appropriation as well. So I'd say over the past 2 years, we spent about $200,000 on the crosswalks. Prior to that, I have to do some research because I wasn't here.
Okay, thank you. On the utility poles, I don't understand why the city has to buy poles to save money. Would you explain that to me?
I can't explain the process. I heard about this through planning. I looked at the spreadsheets and the payoff, but the way it's been explained to me, they value the poles at a certain amount of money, $1.1 million. We get $288,000 worth of grant money to put to those poles, and then we actually get another $375,000 from the utility company. So the net bonding would be about $450,000, and it's expected to pay for itself within 2 years after the lights are retrofitted. So we should be able to start saving. We'll save about $200,000 a year on electricity costs by retrofitting them, and then after the 2 years, they'll be paid. The debt service will pay for itself, and it'll create savings for the city. But I wasn't involved with the Green Communities Act, and I know Jamie was involved. I'm not sure if Tony or Melissa has any more information on that, but.
But this is probably just not the pole, it's the lighting on the pole, is that correct?
It's
In
the
other
entire
words,
unit.
We're gonna go into, what is that, LED lighting that the power company gives us a refund back?
That's
So
correct.
We're buying the pole and the lighting, not just the pole?
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. I'm all done.
Council Napolitano.
Yeah, on that question,
If you'll yield the floor, Council Hanlon?
Are we going to own the poles?
Yes,
And how many poles are we going to own?
I don't know.
You
I don't
don't
know the count. I'll get you that information, but I
Okay,
don't have a count.
and if you do that, I think that because the poles belong to the electric company, we collect taxes on those. I'd like to know if we're gonna lose any tax money on the amount of poles that we're going to be owning ourselves.
I will research that, Council.
Thank you. Sorry, Peter.
Council Napolitano.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to the purchase of open space. If I hear correctly, now, I know that we're looking for $1,350,000, but, and it says including the Best Buy site, but what was the cost of purchasing the Best Buy site?
It's been appraised at $350,000.
Okay, so what's the game plan for the other $1 million? What open space purchasing are we looking at next year that's gonna take up another $1 million?
I don't have any specific lots of land, that's just, it's part of the open space. If something becomes available and we have a bond authorization, that we would be able to purchase that land. There's no particular plot identified at this very moment.
Okay, but how does that play into any work that's going on down in South Everett? So in other words, with the redevelopment commission, we're not talking money there.
No.
All right, but we're looking at $1,350,000 for something, and we're only looking at right now purchasing a $350,000 piece of property, and the rest is
We've
whatever.
identified one piece at $350,000, and the rest would be basically to be prepared to purchase something. Sometimes these pieces come up and, you know,
How much was purchased last year for open space?
none, no, nothing.
Okay, thank you.
We didn't purchase any land last year.
I have a for instance. I can give you a quick for instance if you don't mind.
Anything to shed light on it, because
Sure.
it seems,
No, I'm happy to.
it seems, without knowing more information, it seems like we
Yeah.
padded them out, and I don't want to think in
No,
those terms.
so, for instance, last year Chief Butler called me and said, the house next door to us on Hancock Street just went for sale, and I think we should buy it. And by the time we kind of got the appraisal gone and even started talking about money, the house had already sold. And it would have been perfect for us to either A, expand on the site, or B, put some parking in, which they don't have any parking at all. So that's just an example of how these things happen. You know, every once in a while, we see something go on sale that either would be A, a great pocket park, which would be great for open space, or B, would allow us to do something like that. That's a once in a kind of a lifetime opportunity, and we missed it. And so that's kind of where this idea came from. So blame Chief Butler. But
All right, thank you.
And to that point, if I may, from the chair, if we had that set aside, it still needs to come in front of the city
Yes.
council in order to be voted. So it's not like someone's running around with a paycheck, with a checkbook,
No.
making deposits.
Buying
So-
everything.
yeah, we won't be spying houses or anything, but
Council Napolitano, are you all set? Okay. Council Sani.
Thank you. We have a line item that says designing for refurbished tot locks citywide. We spent $675 last year, and now you're looking for $700,000. What does that consist of, design and refurbish? I mean, design means that you're gonna do over parks, which we already have designs already for some of the parks.
We have 30 parks in the city, I think, give
30?
or take, right?
about 30 parks. We have 30 parks.
About
30 parks. That's right.
30 parks in the city.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So right now, last year, we had $675,000 for the day park for design. We got our cost estimates back to do that park over, would cost over $1 million. So we'd plan on using some portion of this $700,000 to fulfill that day park. And then the balance of it, there's certain parks that could be fixed up without much design work, replacing infrastructure, fences, backstops, swing sets. There's other parks in the city that have, could use a complete redesign and a new concept. So we're trying to leverage some of these dollars to update all the parks in the city. Some, as you see, at $3 million renovations, and some could be $75,000, you know. So we have, working with Julius and some of the engineers, we try to find parks that we can renovate and prioritize, and these are the dollars that we'd use to. This isn't maintenance money, this is actually construction design money, so maintenance money will be built into the operating budget, but this is for, you know, enhancement of parks and top
Doing
lots
the
for
work.
the city. Exactly.
Okay.
So 2 years ago, we used this for Shapiro Park, but that required a design.
Yeah.
Something we might use it for this year would be to take the sand out of the stadium and just put flooring down, which wouldn't technically require a new design, but might, because you may have drainage issues when you take the sand out. So there would be some design that would need to happen in order for us to just pour and play flooring.
All right, thank you very much, almost set.
Councilor DeFlorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to the light poles, I don't think we're paying that much electricity because we have a lot of lights out in the city.
That won't be a problem anymore, because
So
it'll be
I
our
just wanna
our
make
job.
that-
We're trying to save money.
And the other thing is we have no heat up here, so so we're saving money on that. I just want the viewing audience to understand that we are really sacrificing for it. But I actually have a question, I believe it's I believe it might be for Richard O'Donnell, because in regards to the Powell Library, and I understand that Debbie has been very, very busy with the Shute Library, and she's doing a fantastic job. But from what I understand, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, 4 or 5 years ago, we put money aside, or maybe a couple of years ago, for the Powell Library, for the rug and things
paint.
to be done in there. Now, what happened to that money? I don't see it.
That money's still sitting there. That's, I have a list of, all of the items that are either stalled or not progressing as I would imagine, and we're going through that now. I mean, we've been battling all kinds of other things over this winter and preparing these budgets, but, before we close out the fiscal year, all those appropriations that have been made on certain capital items, I will definitely have, status updates. I could probably have more information for you on the 14th.
Okay.
But that funding is for
my
rugs.
question is
It's
that,
rugs,
Rugs,
$80,000 for rugs. And they
Paint
haven't-
and furniture.
Yeah.
well, it's not just the rugs, and I mean, the lighting is terrible there. I think we need a little bit more than just rugs. I've had a few complaints in regards to the,
Yeah, it's rugs, paint, and furniture is the funding that, that they got last year. Nothing to do with lights or any other type of infrastructure, repairs.
I would recommend looking at the lighting. Maybe that's something that we can correct.
I think they were doubled up in that building too while the construction of the Powell was going on, so.
No, I understand that. I mean, I understand
And the Shute, rather.
that, busy with the Shute Library, and I fully understand it, but I still would like to know how much is left in that account, and when do we
It's all
plan on?
there. There's not a dollar that been spent
Okay,
out of it yet.
and when do we plan on doing the work? It doesn't have to be exact, just an idea.
I'll have more information at the next meeting.
All right, thank you.
I'll research that.
Thank you.
Council Mangan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Viskey, getting back to the light poles, again, to take it over, they actually have to have the maintenance of the poles now. But like, for instance, this year, I know you were saying well, we'd save money with LED lighting. I know the electric company this year and boosted up their rates over the winter time tremendously, and, I mean, there was crazy, the electric costs. Do you see that down the road, if they continue to do that, is it really worth us taking over these poles and stuff, especially with the maintenance it's gonna be required? I mean, because our people are gonna have to go out and constantly do that now, whether it's on overtime or anything else. I mean, that's gonna be an additional maintenance and, work that our people are gonna have to go out there trying to maintain these poles now and stuff. If a pole gets knocked down accidentally, or a pole, whatever, constantly, whatever, I know you said LED lighting will last longer, but I don't know if the cost in the long run is gonna be worth taking over these poles, like I said, because we're gonna own them now, we're gonna have to maintain them, things like that. And then with these rates, I mean, you never know what the rates are gonna be. Like I said, these electric rates.
MAPC did a study for us, about purchasing the lights and what the pros and cons are. I'd be happy to forward that along to all of you. If you want, I can email it. And it addresses all of those issues. When a light pole goes down, we actually typically do respond. Our wire department typically responds to a light pole down anyway. So we're there anyway. In addition to the savings, we'd save on the bulbs because the life of an LED light is so long. But let me forward you the MAPC study, and it does address a lot of that.
I just want to make sure we're not putting more burden on our workers to go out and try to maintain extra stuff that, like I said, that it may not be, feasible to do. The other thing is on the land down at Best Buy. I know you said 350,000. I mean, that seems awful high.
We did have it appraised. Whenever,
land,
yeah, just for the
350?
land. Yeah. Originally, they actually wanted to lease it to us for a very large amount of money. And that was when we said, let's get this appraised and see how much it appraises for, and it did appraise for that amount. I was surprised too. I was like, I thought it would be like $30,000. I was way off. But yeah, so we did get it appraised, and that is how much it came back for.
Okay, and then just finally, actually, we just want to make a comment, Mr. President, but I know this past winter, we had, nothing like we've ever seen here before. And I gotta say, especially starting with city services and, ISD and all the fire department, I mean, there was a fabulous job that was done in the city. As we know, you drove around to some of these other cities, and I know a lot of vehicles got beat up and everything, but, this city, the job they did overall was absolutely tremendous. So I just want to thank everybody here, because like I said, it was a snow like we've never seen before. And like I said, I think it was just all the departments, starting with city services, just a absolutely tremendous job. Thank you.
Any other questions? Council DeFlorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to the light bulbs that are on the pole right now, National Grid pays for those light bulbs, is that correct?
Yes.
We don't pay for the light bulbs?
We don't pay for those light bulbs.
Okay, and going back to what Council Hanlon said, that was a very good question that he raised in regards on how much tax revenues we get from those poles, so I would,
There was
I got it down.
You do?
I got it.
Yeah, there was a lot,
Council Hanlon asked the question, so but the other question is, you know how they have they have Mass Save, where they come in and do all your light bulbs? Don't they have it for the city?
That's part of it, $375,000 we're gonna get to retrofit all the poles.
Oh,
So the
okay.
$1,100,000 is really only a net $450,000 cost to the city. And, I don't know how much taxes we get from the poles, it's a great question. But just like, when we buy stuff like this, it becomes part of our fixed assets and actually increases the value of the community as well. So there is, an offset to the tax dollars lost as we have, assets to put on our balance sheet that would, make us look better with regard to bonding, et cetera, because just like any other organization, we have assets and liabilities and we have equity, so those will become assets of the city and give us some value on the books.
And Malden just completed this project, so if you know any of the councilors in Malden, they did just go through the same process, and they now own their lights, so they might be a good person to talk to about this.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If I may, from the chair on the light pole, not to beat
okay.
the hell out of that, but I know that we're going to get the emails on it. I just want to make sure that I clearly understand it. Right now, the poles are owned by the
National.
utility company. They maintain them. Even though we go out, if a pole goes down, we're not doing the work, they are. We're just kind of standing around making sure they get there.
We make sure it's safe, and then we respond,
then
we
we
make sure it's
step
safe,
out.
and then we step out.
And they
Yes.
come in. They're providing the bulbs,
They're providing the bulbs.
and we get tax revenues.
There was a recent lawsuit about that, about
Okay.
5 years ago. I don't know if Colleen remembers. I want to, I'll check it.
Okay.
There was recent lawsuits about the
Okay.
taxing of utility poles, so I want to actually check on that before
So
we.
if we take over the poles, we now own them, we now maintain them,
Mm-hmm.
we put our resources out there, manpower out there to do them. We buy the light bulbs, the only thing we do is we save some electricity.
We save about $200,000 a year,
Okay.
and we envision that we'll have better customer service.
Okay.
We get a lot of calls about
And you
light
have to-
bulbs being out.
You have to
Yeah.
weigh, and I'm sure you have, but you have to weigh out
Of
that when
course.
you're putting manpower out in the pole and things happen,
Mm-hmm.
and who's out on comp, and who does this, that, and the other thing, so there's a lot of variables that are involved with that
course.
process. But, okay, and I will echo your sentiments. The city, it was a brutal winter, and we were head and shoulders above every surrounding community, so we do all appreciate your efforts. Councilor Hanlon? I have no other questions.
Yeah, just, how are we saving electricity on that?
We're installing LED light bulbs instead of regular light bulbs, and the cost savings from the LED light bulbs are about $222,000 a year.
So if those light bulbs do not use as much electricity?
If those light bulbs are not used, we would not see the same cost savings. It's because we're using energy savings initiatives.
Okay.
So if we use regular light, if we bought the poles and we use regular light bulbs, nothing would change.
Okay, funny question. Why wouldn't the utility company put all these light bulbs up?
They don't really want us to have energy savings because they want us to pay the higher bill.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we go to another department? Have I got the floor? Who's got the floor?
Do you have a question on this point, Council? Council McKinnon, and then we'll go back to you, Council Hanlon.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Chief of Staff. Are we going to be anticipating, because we're going to be actually maintaining these poles, increasing the wire department now? With
I think we're going to be,
positions or staffing?
yeah, I think we're going to be anticipating increasing the wire department anyway,
Mm-hmm.
because about once a day I get a call from city services telling us we need more people in the wire department. We technically have one electrician on staff, and it's just not enough. because he's doing all the electrical work in the entire city, not just the poles, but any electrical work we need run, even phone lines. So I anticipate that we'll be seeing that department
How
expanding
many
anyway.
people are currently in there now? There's just one?
There's one electrician, and then there's his assistant.
Okay, so there's two people?
There's
now?
2 people in the entire light department.
What are we anticipating for this project? And
For this
maintain-
project, for maintaining the lights, once the initial job is done, and they wouldn't do the initial job, that would be impossible. They wouldn't do the initial job. Once the initial job is done, those lights have a large life expectancy. Depending on the type of bulb that you put in, the MAPC study says it could be anywhere from 5 to 20 years before you have to change the light. So really, they'd only be responding to a light that maybe is hit by a car or is an anomaly. So I'm not seeing it as a large undertaking once the initial lights are put in.
So how many bodies are we additionally looking at putting down there?
Right now, City Services has really only asked for 1 more electrician.
Okay.
That could change as the budget requests go in, but that's what he's asked for now.
So that's coming in our upcoming budget?
Yes.
Okay, so it'll only be 1 more position coming?
That's what
Okay.
he's asked for so far.
Thank you.
Counselor Hanlon.
Okay, Chief Butler, please.
Please have Chief Butler before us.
He's been waiting in the wings. He's been waiting out there.
Good evening, Chief Butler.
Fire Department, page 4.
Thank you, Chief.
Chief, sorry to keep you waiting so
No
long.
problem.
On page 4, I want to talk about the turnout equipment.
Sure.
And I know you're going to get 40 new uniforms, 20 will be going for new people coming on, and 20 will be for the, I guess, the guys that have the oldest pieces of equipment.
Exactly. We do an inspection of everybody's personal protective equipment once a year. And what we would do is select the 20 pieces of turnout gear that are in the worst condition and replace those, and hopefully get on a 5-year cycle. The life expectancy of turnout gear is about 6 years on average. The gear that we're currently using is about 8 years old.
Okay. The question I want to ask, and this a question I asked the chief of police, and I don't think I made it correctly. I talked about lawsuits. I wasn't talking about people suing the police department. I was talking about the police department suing the police department for faulty equipment. So the same question I want to ask you is would a fireman come along with a really bad piece of equipment and say, you didn't protect me, chief, I'm going to sue you, or the city?
Well-
I mean, is that a possibility? Is the equipment that bad?
No, I mean, I think I can speak for the police chief.
I mean, that's what I meant to him.
And I can speak for myself, too, that if a piece of equipment was in that bad a condition, we would take it out of service immediately.
Okay.
I think that's the same situation over there, that he's depleted his stash, cache, if you want to call it, of spare radios because he's replacing them, you know, for the radios that are in bad condition. And we do the same thing. You know, our supply's slowly dwindling also. But we don't have anything in service that should not be in service.
Thank you. I feel much
Yeah,
better about
I
that.
think that's what you're asking.
Okay, my other question is that I know your office, I've been down there and I've been talking to you a lot. You work out of a broom closet. And I don't know if it's true what I heard tonight. Are you getting this building? Is that plans?
I'd like to get this land.
I mean, have we talked about that at all?
There has been some talk about it. You know, there's been some talk of possibly locating a fire station here, which I would be in favor of.
So equipment being where? Where would you put your equipment?
Well, it would be in-
If you're going to have a fire station here, you'd have your fire engines, right?
Mhm.
Where would they be?
In the building. We're talking about building a new fire station here,
Oh, okay.
not in the current building.
Okay, so tear this building down and put it,
Yes,
okay. That's, I
exactly.
didn't understand that, you know. Because I had heard at one time we may sell the building to business people, something, you know.
There's been different plans as far as the fire station goes. And, you know, one of our concerns was where we're gonna locate it. And when, you know, the mayor approached me about the possibility of using this site, the beauty of that is we could combine 2 fire stations into one at this location. It's a good location for that purpose. And that would solve a lot of other problems, such as where would we go while we were rebuilding in the current locations. And you know, I thought it was a great idea to locate a station here.
Yeah, it's not bad. Okay, I'm finished with the fire department.
Chief, you have a good eye for real estate, I can see. Counsel McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. President, to the chief. Chief, how much of the equipment How much does that cost per?
The turnout gear? It's about $2,500 a set for the pants, the turnout pants, about $1,000, and
Will
the
this- will this-
coats are $1,500.
Will this increase your stash cash, as you put it, for the equipment that you?
No,
need?
we don't have any turnout gear, and
Okay.
that turnout gear that they wear is all custom
It's built
custom
for-
fitted.
Okay, so it would be built towards.
It's
individual-
built for the firefighter.
So there's gonna be 20 new.
We're
individuals in
anticipating putting 10 new people on
Okay.
in the near future. Each recruit candidate receives 2 sets of equipment.
Okay.
One set is to keep in reserve if the set he's using gets wet.
Yep.
They can't wear wet gear into, a fire later on that day. They'd be steamed to death. So we give them 2 sets, and then the other 20 would be for replacement of 1 set for
Other guys
existing gear that's worn out.
Is that enough?
That's,
Right now?
that's a good
That's
start.
sufficient?
That would get us on a cycle where we'd be able to replace it every 5 years as opposed to having to go after that big lump sum of money all at once.
All right, and then the other question that I have is the replacement of the, what is it, Fire One?
The ladder truck?
Yes.
Ladder 1.
It would be Ladder One?
Yep.
Okay, and how old is that truck right now?
It's 20 years old.
And is it in what type of shape?
It's beginning to cost us a lot of money, the repairs. It's out for repairs right now.
What's it, hydraulic and stuff like that?
Now we're having problems with the engine, and the bill for that repair right now is up to $40,000.
Really? Okay, so it's feasible to say that we need a,
It's at the end of its useful life. The average life expectancy of a ladder truck today is about 15 years. So, I mean, it served us well.
We got an extra 5 out of it.
There you go.
All right. So it's in need for a replacement.
Absolutely.
All right. And will it fit in this building, I wonder?
No, we do have some problems with height in our current fire stations. Trucks that are being built today will not fit in those stations.
Yeah.
So we are looking at alternative sites right now until we get the new station built.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? Seeing none, thank you, chief. Any other questions on the floor?
Yes, Mr. Viskey.
Counselor Hanlon.
On page 17, we're talking about $3 million for the, I guess, the planning of the, what to do with the old high school. Okay. In the thing here, it says that this project is in a preliminary design with last year's CIP funds. So do you know how much funds were in last year's CIP?
350,000.
So we're talking the design of this building is going to be $650,000?
Design for construction documents to go out to bid for a total configuration of the old high school, yes.
And it's $6 million? That's what it is?
$3 million, I mean,
We said 3.5 last year and 3 this year.
oh, 350,000,
Oh, last year was $350,000?
that's right.
Big savings right there. Thank you. Okay, my other question now is regarding the same thing, I guess, is that the recreation rec that we have is going to go into a wellness center at the old, are we going to have a wellness center at the old rec building?
The recreation department has been moved up to the.
I know that,
yes.
okay. My question is that I understand that we need a new elementary school, and the site I've been hearing is the recreation center to move up here, so we don't need it, the police station, which are going to eventually be moving to the high school, and the radio building, 911 building, will also be moving up there. So are we going to be spending that money on that place, and we'll be tearing it down eventually?
I don't have specific answers to those particular buildings. I know that the plan that's put forward with regard to the recreation center is that we would take it down and put a new one in that location with a swimming pool, but I don't have an answer on what we would do with the old police station and E911 at this point.
So the $350,000 is to build a new rec center?
That's the plan, that's to put construction documents together to build one. They say it's about 10% of the cost of building something is the design to put it out to bid. So with an estimate of $3.5 million to build a new rec center, you gotta figure about $350,000 to put the design specs together.
I would like to know, if we go along with that, what would the future plans of that building be? How long would that building be there? You know, I mean,
Yes.
if we're thinking of maybe tearing it down, if you know.
I think about 5 years ago, that plan was floated around to take those 3 buildings and create the school. We actually abandoned that plan based on conversations with the school department. They want to expand the Cavarian School on its own footprint where it is now, and that's the plan we're going forward with instead. So we're no longer going to put a school at the rec, police station, and 911. That rec, when we reconstruct it, will be the permanent home of the recreation center, as well as some other offices as well, maybe a potential site for our Boys and Girls Club teen after-school program, a pool for the high school to have their swim meets at, et cetera, but it will not be a school.
Not be a school.
It will not be a school. The school's going to be on the footprint of the Cavarian School.
Okay. You heard it here first. Okay. Thank you.
Rob.
Council Mangan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Melissa, following up what Council Hanlon just said, you know, Dr. Stella was up here a week ago when he talked about possible expansion of the high school. I mean, would it make sense, now you're saying no, for instance, a K through 8. Would it make sense, though, on that particular land, if we got rid of the pool and the rec and the 911 and the police station, doing a combination of like more classrooms, but like, for instance, the pool that the you know, the public as well as the school could utilize?
Sure.
And also, I don't know how many stories, whether it's 4, 5, or 6 stories, something like that, where you could utilize classroom space, but also public, you know, like I said, for instance, a regulation track, combination with, like, for instance, pool or more basketball courts, whatever is needed in the city. Is that something that you think is feasible for that particular site?
So when we did the visioning before we, there's an item on your agenda Monday night about the high school, maybe it was last Monday night about the high school. Before we did that item, we had a visioning session with the schools, and we talked about, could we put just the 9th grade over there? Could we, but the problem was, we don't live in the kind of environment where you can have a campus. You know what I mean? When winter comes, they still would need to access the cafeteria. How would they get to the gymnasium? You know, how do they get to the art rooms? Those all became issues when we talked about that. And that's why we decided that it made more sense to take a look at the high school and expand it on its footprint to the left and the right. So I guess the original high school plan, this was long before I was here, actually had additional space on the sides. So that's actually the plan they decided to go forward with, because it doesn't make sense for us to have kids kind of crossing the street to get to their classroom. And you can't go up at the site they're in now because they have air conditioning units on the roof. And also exhaust fans. So that didn't really make sense either. So that was what they determined. They determined the best plan for the high school was for them to expand to the left and to the right, and for us to go forward with the recreation center, having the pool and the other things that they may need on that site across the street.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Excuse?
I have a couple from the chair. I'll make them very brief. As far as the smart meters, the $75,000 outlay, how many units are we talking about with that?
There's 2 types of smart meters. There's single-space meters, they're about $500 a piece.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the multi-space meters that they're around $12,000. So we got some ideas on beta sites. What we want to do is we want to take the $75,000 and put them at a beta site and see how they work, see what the pros and cons of them are, and then contemplate if we're going to expand the program. Most of the meters in the city are in pretty good shape right now, so. But there are other opportunities to maybe expand meters and begin the replacement. The ability to, people don't carry around $3 and change anymore. It becomes cumbersome, and you probably there's, from an audit perspective, the more transactions that are done digitally that go right into the bank, it's great. The money gets in there quicker. It's an easier audit trail. So it would be a great thing to go citywide. But again, there's some meters out there that are in pretty good shape, but we want to at least see how the program works and pick a couple of sites. Maybe some of the parking lots that are in rough shape, we can take out some of the meters and save them for reserves and do a demo over there, see how it goes.
Okay. As far as the $3 million for roadway and sidewalk work, do we have specific locations? Do we have a list?
We've, we had an initial meeting, we usually start it around now. We had an initial meeting last week where we started looking at streets. What's important, most important to us is to meet with the gas company, to make sure that we're not picking streets that they're planning on doing gas with. So we're having those meetings now as well. I expect that the list will be formulated pretty soon. Like Rich said before, we had a number of streets from last year that weren't finished, because of the weather. So for instance, Liberty Street, the gas company's there now. A lot of the time what happens is we give the gas company list of streets we're going to be on, and they say, whoa, 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 we need to come in. The Corey Street parking lot is about to be done from last year's money. And a few other, the Maple Ave, we're finishing now. I think they're planning on being there Monday, I think they said. So I expect that the list for next year will be completed over the next few weeks.
How many streets and sidewalks would we be able to address with $3 million?
It depends on the
Rough
length.
guess.
Yeah, it depends on the length of the street. So I think this year we were able to do over 20 streets with that amount of money, right? Oh, it's over about 20, approximately 20 streets with that amount of money. That included doing the parking lot back here as well. So it really depends. Like if you have a street, we're obviously not going to do Ferry Street, but if you do a street like Chute Street's long, you know, and it may take longer than we could do less than if we did something like Mason Street.
Sure. And then one last question, the crosswalks, I have that on our calendar for the 13th. I think we've addressed a lot of those questions. Still a couple more, but what's the average cost per crosswalk with the brick pattern look?
About $6,000.
About $6,000? All right. And the only thing that I would add to this, and then I'll turn it back over to the floor, is I know that, Rich, you were looking to try to get approval of this before you submit the operating budget. Ideally, what kind of time frame are you looking at?
The operating budget is due
May 15th.
45 days before the end of the fiscal year. That's May 15th. I don't know what the second meeting of May is, but I mean, it'd be great if we can have some meetings during this next month of April. And again, if it's not totally complete, it would be nice to have an idea of what may go forward, because I won't want to build into operating budget debt service payments and such if we haven't vetted through it, but it would be helpful.
Okay.
Like I said, ideally, it would be great if we vetted through this over the next month, but
Okay.
we'll
And-
take it
and
as it goes.
And that's quite possible, because we have 2 meetings in April. We have this come up on the 13th, we'll have one other meeting in April. And we, if not the entirety, then probably a good portion of it anyway, so.
Well, I'm
all right.
available all month, so.
All right. Councilors, thank you for indulgence. Floor, I think it was Councilor Hanlon first.
Mr. Chairman, just one quick statement. That I want to thank all the department heads for being here, and plus our honored guests at the front table here. But I need to ask you to find out for us if, can we pass this in its total, or can we defeat it in its total, or can we rip it apart and take a few things out, or just do what we want to do with it?
And I'll ask you, my understanding would be that just like any other budget, you could cut
amendments.
from it,
Yeah,
and then,
the 2 years that we've done this, since I've been here, you've adopted it as presented. You may have modified a couple of things, and then that allows me to then prepare the documents to bring forward for bonding and free cash transfers. And now we have a CIP stabilization fund, so, again, I think what would work well operationally is to kind of go through this and pick it apart and ask you questions, and then maybe decide to accept it as it's presented or modify it, but then come forward. But that's just what I'd like to see, and I think it would be an efficient operation. And of course, things don't always work out that way, but I hope that between the administration and the department heads here, we can at least try to answer all the questions to get favorable recommendations.
Councilor Hanlon, do you have any other questions, or you good?
No.
Councilor McKinnon.
Mr. President, through you to Mr. Viskey, and maybe it's just, I would address you on this, it would be the functionality of the next meeting. We may want to have all the department heads come back, because if we are going to anticipate any type of cutting or line items that we're
They would be
going
able to address
doing,
it, yeah.
I want them in front of us so that they can actually come up and defend themselves or defend their department. So, I mean, that would probably be.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. It's an excellent point, Councilor. At the end of this, I was going to,
Yep.
whoever was still here, and God bless you for being patient, I was going to address that through Chief of Staff and just make sure that
Problem.
department heads are here on Monday and do appreciate your patience. But if there's a line item that's in your department, it's going to be important to be able to speak to it if there is a question.
I would think that, I mean, if we're gonna look at this, and, you know, as Councilman Hanlon had said, you know, if we're gonna either pass it as a whole or defeat it as a whole, I think we should look at it as line items. Because
Absolutely.
if we have specific line items that we wanna cut, we should go redlining right through them, so. I mean, I think that we'll have enough time to actually absorb and take a look at this, and then we'll be able to line item things out, so that would probably be a good way to proceed,
Yeah,
I would think.
I believe so too. Excellent point, Counselor.
Thank you.
Counselor DeFlorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make one thing clear. I mean, right now, if you have like set in this book, vehicles to go out to bond, 10 vehicles. If we approve this, those 10 vehicles are not going out to bond. You have to come in front of us for an order. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And I just want to clarify that. The other thing I want to clarify is that we have to realize, and being in this building today, okay, no heat. You come here another day, it's 200 degrees, they can't shut the heat off. Our grandchildren are paying for the debt of 50 years of this building being here and nothing ever being done. So we have to also look at the future, and I understand we can't keep hitting the taxpayer, we can't keep hitting the taxpayer. That was the whole idea of the capital improvement plan, that we continue to do capital improvement to the property that we own in the city of Everett. Because in your home, if you don't do anything in your home for 50 years, everything is gonna break at once. So you put money together, you finance your money, you say, okay, this year I'm gonna put a new heating system. Next year I'm gonna do this, because you don't want it to break down and spend double the money when it does break down. So unfortunately, this is what we've been doing in the city of Everett for the last 100 years. We don't fix water lines, we wait for them to break, and we spend double the money because it's an emergency in the middle of the night. So we have to realize that, I'm not saying I want to spend foolish money, but capital improvement is not foolish money, and we are not approving anything. We're just saying, if Richard Biscay comes to us 6 months from now, or 8 months from now, and says, we want to buy the 8 vehicles down city services, we could say to him, no, we don't want to buy 8, we want to buy 6. This isn't approving anything. And I understand where Richard Biscay is coming from, he's just saying, well, give me an idea of what you want me to put through the budget, but it's still not edged in stone. It doesn't mean that it's gonna be approved, it still has to be approved by the city council at some point.
Absolutely. Yeah, this has been laid out in a way that you can look at it by, we have $1,100,000 that we're looking to use capital improvement stabilization account. So, you know, even if we could take those items and say, hey, is this $1,000,001, we agree to it, or do we think that a piece of equipment isn't worth buying this year? And if I can get some direction on that, maybe we can come forward with an order to buy that, because there's work it takes on our end. We gotta wait for the money. We're not buying anything without money appropriated. Then we have to go out, in some case, we have to get this stuff custom built. So, you know, every day that goes by, we're just putting ourselves behind, so that's kind of why we hope that it's acted upon, so we can get going, because realistically, a lot of this stuff probably won't come into a reality until maybe July 1st or later, because, I mean, Ford Escapes, yeah, you might be able to buy those pretty quickly, but, you know, there's 10-wheel dump trucks and, you know, sidewalk plows after the winter we've had. This stuff is in demand everywhere, and, you know, the idea of bringing the plan forward and trying to show you what the ramifications are of a long-term bond versus, you know, we went and adopted a stabilization capital fund so that we have access to the money, so we don't have to bond it. We have $1.5 million in there. So we can certainly act somewhat quickly on this if everyone's in agreement to the equipment, and, you know, we don't want to leave our city services short-handed. We have another summer of fixing roads, and then we're going to be right back in the winter. So this cycle turns quick, so not that we're trying to rush, but we present it in a way that we think should be able to go through and vet through it, but at the end of the day, you adopt a plan, and then we can start going forward to get bonding and start to get our ducks in a row.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, excuse me, customary thanks.
Thank you.
All department heads, thank you so very much for being patient, for being here. There is the meeting, it's set up for a public hearing and the council meeting on the 13th of April, so we would ask that you be here again in case there are any questions. And Melissa, if you could relay that to any folks who aren't here, we would greatly appreciate that.
Motion to refer the capital improvement budget to the...
Chairman, on the motion.
Counsel.
I like the idea very much of
No.
going through one department at a time. So whoever is in here, and I don't know what order they're in, but maybe we just go by the
This gets referred to
the
on
document that they gave us, go
Public
from
hearing.
one page to the next page and so forth, you know? But to get all the questions asked by one department and let them go home, you know, it seems like
Yeah.
a wise move, you know, on our part. And we don't have people going back and forth, and probably could have saved ourselves 40 minutes tonight, you know, if we had done it the other way. And I like the way you said that, to do that. So I would like to make a motion that we, at our next meeting, if we're going to discuss any department heads, do them by whatever schedule you, as chairman, set up. I don't care if it goes alphabetically, or the guy that has the most money, the guy that has the littlest amount of money can be
Okay.
out of here at 7:02, you know, and the guy that has the most money could be last, you know, so whatever way you want to set up. But I think
Sure.
it'd be wise to do it
Sure.
one at a time, so we can get
Yeah.
all the questions asked.
I think so as well. Okay.
Make a motion to refer the capital improvement budget to the April 13 meeting.
It's been moved and second to refer the,
That's April 3rd, public hearing.
well, it'll go to the meeting, but they do have the public hearing before that, so. All those in favor?
When?
Opposed? So moved. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So I'll be referring
Moved and second to adjourn. All in favor?
Okay.
Opposed? You have
Otherwise, I
adjourned.
didn't want to refer it to our meeting. Okay.